Yes.
Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. Another Sunday for the people, by the people. Tonight, obviously, we got a whole lot to talk about, guys. We have for the past 3 days, young people were out there. And Pastor, what I was thinking? When you have Fabakary Tombong Jatta and Madi Jobate in what other group am I talking about? The non-alliance, and they all speaking from the same hymn book. There's a problem. Everyone is demanding. They're all speaking the same language. But wow, this is very interesting. So we're going to be talking about that, and of course we're going to be joined by Ba Tambadou in responding to the Republic expose. Assets of Gambian former dictator go for a song. So Ba is going to be joining us, and we are looking forward to having a conversation. Pop Tamba, the past 3 days, Gambia, Banjul, the greater Banjul area, Dafatanga Jir. What's up?
Well, greetings to everybody. And Musa, before you them Fofusa, me and history. 9 years ago was when we started hosting this show.
Yes, sir.
That was the 8th of May because of the December 30th issue, because Banca had started the show, I think, a year earlier. So it looks like we've been doing this now for 9 years.
Yeah.
It's a long time. And the show has also evolved, because it used to be an outlet to vent about our frustration with what was going on, and of course to cheer also the opposition coalition candidate. And now it has taken a life of its own, and it's been a very eventful 9 years, if I may add that. And of course now we have His Excellency, His Royal Highness, Mr. Sarian Marong, by way of Badibu.
No, it's Sintet.
Sintet. Isn't it Sintet Fini Nagalatura? They have Sintet in Badibu too?
He always, I try to explain this to him many times, but he always confused things.
Makla.
It's Badibu. I'm a Badibunka. You know how the old man used to travel and establish business and all that. So he went to Sintet. He established business out there with my grandfather. So we were all born and raised there. So, we have a big family home in Sintet. So most of my extension and everything else goes in there. We don't have any family members there, but there's a family compound. My grandfather has a compound there, so my uncle built a school there, so everything is there. So,
bro, as we get ready to lunch, it is always good to be a Badibunga and a Funyinga at the same time.
I think I have to wear a board. And Coach, by the way, what's it? Kebasan is my name. So.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I've been engaging him, so I didn't get him off the hook. So I mean, Newell just sponsored a mobile clinic last Saturday over in
I saw that.
So,
I think I saw you put something.
Yeah, there was a huge turnout, so it was very positive. So, and I told him that that's what diasporas who cannot vote, that's what they can do for their community. So I just want to let him know that for the record.
That was good. That was definitely good. Congratulations, though, Chariang. I think you mentioned it to me. I mean, it was something you were working on.
Yeah. And with this guy, Yanks Jabi, he has this clinic in Wulinkama. So, yeah,
that's nice. Man, these allergies are killing me. The hay fever. So you'll be hearing me from time to time coughing. So when I collapse, hamne lumarite allergy bila. So
no, but this thing is going around though.
No. The fight companion. Why he's not going to have it from me, because man ma setam benga hamne mo genanda usi city mo mo ne consider best friend. So just imagine, So most man suma age group of Musa I think has almost about 25 years on me.
Oh my God. Anyway, so Pop Samba.
Yes, sir.
So what's your take on what happened these past 3 days? It was on Wednesday or Thursday that this whole brouhaha. Well, actually, they started out with a press conference, I thought. They came out and said this was what they intend to do. They were going to apply for a permit. And the permit was denied. And they came back and said they are actually going to go out there and, do what they wanted to do. Present, I think it was a petition or something to that effect. The following day, they did exactly what they said they were going to do, and they were arrested. So, Pop Samba, what's your reading of all of that and how the past 3 days, what you witnessed?
Well, Musa, I must start and tell you this. I was sitting here. I spoke to some of the guys today. In fact, last night I was at another platform on TikTok. And I was saying to myself, you know what? Maybe it's about time for me to retire now. Because definitely we have arrived. These young people are determined. They are fearless. And they love their country, Musa. And you cannot sit there and not appreciate what you saw. It was organic, and it was not like anybody forced anybody to do anything. Correct. The saddest thing, though, was this continued violation of people's rights by our government. Because this nonsense of permit, in fact, is ridiculous. Because the Public Order Act, yes, is the law of the land, and foolishly, we still have that nonsense in our country. The same act that Jammeh relied on to arrest, torture, and kill solo sending. The same act that one can say propelled a lot of people to say, you know what, enough of Jammeh, he has to go, is still now in existence. Because for the most part, when people come into power, they tend to forget everything they were against before they came to power. So if there is any failure of our coalition 2016, it's the fact that the Public Order Act is still in place. And you will hear people tell you, you know what, we went to court and the court ruled that it was constitutional. I'm glad that Bankamane, our lawyer in making, was able to break it down. Because the courts were very clear. The discretion, yes, is with the IGP, but the IGP cannot use the discretion also to violate the rights of individuals. And the Public Order Act is very clear. If you are not using a public address system, you do not need to seek a permission to go and stage a protest. That's what it says. And to go and arrest these young people who are not even started doing anything, they were just sitting there. They came and arrested them. And then next day, what happened? When hundreds to thousands of other young people came out, they realized we cannot arrest all these people, so let's take them. And Musa, this is where when governments overreact unnecessarily, and when governments are fearful of their citizens, is what happens. This could have been easily solved. All they could have done, you want a permit? Yes. What do you want to do? You want to go and protest? You want to go and present a petition? They say, fine. Not only will we give you a permit, but we will make sure we'll give you security to help, we'll do the procession. Maybe it's going to be from here to here. We will march with you until you go and hand over your petition, make your speech, and then we go to the other venue. Within 2 hours, that whole process would have come to an end. But the government, like all these governments that we have in Africa who do not respect anybody's rights, they are more concerned about how they continue to self-perpetuate, acted foolishly by denying them the rights. But kudos to these young people because of them and their actions. And of course, you have to give it to Mustafa. If Mustafa had not written this piece, there would not have been the reaction by the young people. And the reaction of the young people is the reason why this list that they have been trying to protect for 5 years now is finally out. All people have been asking for the list. Oh, we cannot take it out because of the privacy of the buyers. And you look at the list and you see names, you're like, who are these people? Who are they protecting? What are they protecting? So if the people had not come out and did what they did, we would still be here. This whole Jammeh commission would have been shrouded in secrecy. It's still shrouded in uncertainty as far as I'm concerned. There are a lot more answers a lot more questions than answers provided. So to the young people, you are gallant citizens of that country. Don't allow anybody to use you. Don't allow anybody to discourage you. They would say all foolish things like they used to say during the Jammeh days. Or there are people in the diaspora who are forcing them to do. You are grown folks. You know what you want. Continue to fight for your rights irrespective of who is the president of that country. That's it. We cannot just allow some cabals to just run our country, do whatever they want, and then they say, oh, you cannot protest because the police say security for whom? They don't care about people's security. All they care about is Barrow's continued perpetuation in power. That's it. They're scared of the people. If you have nothing to be scared of, nothing to worry, don't be scared. Allow the people to protest because it is a guaranteed fundamental right that must not be abrogated. And I know you, with Musa and abrogation. Say it whenever you hear me say abrogation or whatever. But Nyancho, I am going to retire. I'm now going to be an elderly statesman when it comes to protest because
you're already elderly. Huh? And Pap Samba, I'm sure yourself and Fatou Jau and the Karambas of this world, Sophie. I mean, people still remember having your cardboards, Washington, D.C. Few people that most Gambians wouldn't join you. And you guys were to protest on Osmbenga and the rest of the gang. It wasn't very popular. You and I, behind the scenes, and going all the way back to Jammeh's days, you know my response to protest. It wasn't my first go-to in the toolbox. Always. My thing was, let's engage, let's do coalition, banka pasamba, protest. There is absolutely no doubt that the very change that we all were yearning for instance, that bad law, you just mentioned it.
The Public Order Act.
We all remember what happened when, was it Femi Peters?
Yes.
He was going to fight for the permit. He was given the, out of that, Femi Peters was taken to court. The same Public Order Act was used to send him to jail. I couldn't remember Wajwara, whether it was the Public Order Act, he was charged with sedition as well, taken to jail. We all remember Solo Sendeng when out there. The same Public Order Act was basically used, torture him, and send him to his grave. So one can say that.
And Usain Dabo and Co too.
So if there was one thing that we all know, that the very change that we have in the heart of it, at the heart of it, is this changing of the law itself, the Public Order Act. It hasn't been done, and it's unfortunate. And that was something that I thought it would be the first thing that the coalition government should have gone after and make the change that needed to be done. But it didn't happen. Now, when we talked a few days ago, I said the government would be smart enough, like you just highlighted. The kids said they were going to come out. It was about what, 10, 15 handful of them. All they could have done, and I'm talking about the politics of it too, all they could have done is, okay, call them, have a meeting with them. What do you intend to do? This is the way we're going to do it as partnership. We're going to escort you to do A, B, and C. That didn't happen. As usual, government, call them whether they are afraid or whatever it is, they will hide behind law and order. We want to make sure that, nobody is going to utilize this to make this country ungovernable, just the fear itself. And they say, deny. But Pasama, there's something interesting from yesterday. And I think we all need to take heed of that. And that is, really, power is in the hands of the people. And it really did. What we all witnessed is the government, they knew that they're heading in the wrong direction. They knew Gambians are speaking in the same voice. Different. I was just kidding when I said, when you have Madi Jobata and Fabaka Tombong Jara making the same demands, then you know that this is interesting times. So when people demanded, the government capitulated. And to me, is a sign that our democracy will continue to evolve. as long as we understand as the people that when we speak together and we make demands that are genuine, there is no government, this government, future government, that could withstand it. So I want to say kudos to those young people that went out there. They call themselves the Gen Z, for them to recognize that the future of this country is definitely in their hands. As long as we stay away from these so-called divisions and partisan division, there are things that can bring us together. We can all support different parties, but when everything is said and done, there are things that we all demand, and then we should be able to work together to achieve it. Fatu Jaumane, how are you?
Musa Jeng, I'm good, thank you. Good afternoon, Pasamba.
The Rosa pack of the struggle.
But I'm going to follow Pasamba's footsteps. It's time for us to retire.
We're in good hands now.
Yes. This past week has been very depressing for the whole country. Very shocking. Seriously depressing. But there was some light at the end of the tunnel. We just you all spoke for me. I'm just going to reiterate the same that you mentioned. Democracy is at work. Unfortunately, it's not coming from the quarters that we expected it from. We fought so that we can bring in a very democratic government. That did not happen, but it did not go in vain, because the young people, have learned, and they are willing to stand up for us when these adults are mismanaging basically the rights and lives of the citizens. We have young folks. They brought us all to tears. From even the Republic. What is it? Mustafa is relatively a very young man. A very young man. He pulled that article. It was from a deep place. Reading it, he puts us all to shame. It's very unfortunate, but we are not going to get discouraged. I think what we fought for, we are seeing it evolving in a different way. First of all, these people should not have been denied the right to protest. They could have just tell them, here you go. Okay, you're good. What's the purpose? Okay, we trust you guys. We are in a democracy. Go ahead. We're not going to infringe on your rights. But if you do wrong, or if you break the law, we are going to come after you guys. We're not going to play too. They could have done that. Let these guys go do their demonstration, send their letter to wherever. But this government is so sensitive, so corrupt, so cruel. These people are so wicked, so soulless. You know what I mean? They're so sensitive, because if you're doing well, if you're doing right, you should not fear anything. They should let these people demonstrate. The president should invite them. The ministers should invite them. The police should invite them. Community leaders should have invited them, not to clamp down on people who are demonstrating their rights. This majority of them are kids, and here we are. We can't solve our issues. The kids has to stand up. The young folks have to stand up. But just as you guys said, not everything is in vain. It's a very shameful week. A very stressful week, a very depressing week for the whole country. But out of the blue, come young folks. They said, we are here. We know what is going on. They don't know much about the law, all the legal implications, but they know that the people that we leave to lead us are all majority, a bunch of wicked folks. This government is worthless, Jang, Pasamba, and Sariam. Worthless for us. All these revelations coming. Watch until they discover something on Barrow and Fatma Taba. That's when we all going to leave town. We're going to run out of town. They are so corrupt. These people are so corrupt, so wicked. Who does this to the country? All these Jammeh folks, properties. I cannot believe Jammeh too. I knew Jammeh was a wicked king. And I knew he had a lot of properties, but I did not know it is this deep. And when these properties came too, I know we are corrupt, but I did not know too Gambia is so corrupt to this level. This is the lowest, man. The lowest of the lowest. Shameless from adults. I'm glad we have young folks who think differently from us. If we mess up, they're going to come after us. And I'm very happy that it was a really, really inspiring moment for us. We were all shocked, but it was very inspiring coming from these young folks, you know.
Inspiring and stuck.
Yes.
Without doubt, without a doubt, Fatijao. Brother Marong.
Yeah, Father Most, thank you very much. Thank you, Fatu and Coach. I think, you know, it was not handled well. You know, I mean, leading to the protest, I mean, everything that's been handled is being not handled well. I mean, leading these young folks, what they were asking was merely a list. What you could have done was just produce the list or let them organize and show their displeasure and out their grievances. And I think that's very, very simple. But I think this the Public Order Act, you know, somehow every time, you know, you're saying, oh, for security reason, what's the security reasons? I mean, after initially they've been arrested 2 days in a row, they've been protesting. What kind of security threat did they, you know, inflict on the community or the society? So these are, it's complicated, but it's not also complicated. So you have to walk a fine line. But I think everything they've been handling so far, it's wrong, right? So far, we've seen when ESA went to West Coast Radio, talks about security and everything. Security outfit's supposed to be apolitical. I mean, I was thinking, how about 2026 if SFR becomes the president? I mean, why would the army outfit respond to what he says on Coffee Time? I'm sad. So they lost their way. And I think somehow there should be a good soul searching how to navigate through these, you know, challenging times. I mean, security outfit needs to be apolitical. That's just what it is. No matter what politician they dig at each other, you stay away from it because it's not your role to get into the public debate, you know, one way or the other. But I think overall, it kind of brings the question, is this Public Order Act that they keep inferring to and saying, we have to give you a permit. Is it real? Because 3 days in a row, they had protests and it was very orderly. There was no violence. There was no destruction of private properties. So in essence, there is absolutely no issues. It's a matter of having a dialogue, and you can definitely guide them through. I mean, if all we want was the best for the country, we want accountability, these issues of corruption over and over, how do you tally that? It's the government. This should have been, actually, the government should embrace this and say, hey, we're going to work with you guys and everything, but not kind of telling them, oh, no. And the images you see, you know, the paramilitary dragging the young man on the floor and trying to grab someone, Alu picking him up and throwing him into, you know, the pickup truck. It reminds us that there is still a lot more to do in terms of de-escalation posture that these security folks should take in a more modern democracy. So it's very, very important. So I think that's what I wanted to add on what you guys already highlighted.
Thank you, Brother Marong.
Almost, I wanted to say something before you go there. I just wanted to wish Fatu and all our listeners, the mothers out there, a very, very, very happy Mother's Day.
Thank you.
Today is it. You know, Hamga Musa is not a gentleman, so he will not even remember that. That's how he was able to open the show. You know,
he remember. He gotta be fair to him, though.
That is, he may not even have. You know, he's an old man. He may not even have remembered that.
Oh, but he do remember, Coach.
Today is Mother's Day, so you know, happy Mother's Day to everybody.
Thank you.
Well, I'm gonna follow your, of course. Happy Mother's Day to my wife. Happy Mother's Day to my mom in Firdaus, and happy Mother's Day to my Ajere women making a difference here in Atlanta. And happy Mother's Day to my good friends, the Baramos Go crew. I would have to wish them that.
Are you trying to butter them up already?
I have to. And happy Mother's Day to my good friend Nene Frida Gomez. She was out there doing what she does well. And happy Mother's Day to Fatu Jau Mane. Anyway, here we go. The second phase of tonight's conversation. We're joined here by Ba Tambadou. It's good to see you, Brother Ba.
Mos, how are you? Can you hear me?
Doing well, sir. How about yourself?
Alhamdulillah.
That's great. That's great.
Aboubacarr.
Good.
Mr.
How are you? Sawyang, how are you? Fatu Jau, how are you?
Aboubacarr Tambadou.
We're good, thank you, thank you.
Happy Mother's Day to you as well.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you so much.
It's great.
Happy Mother's Day to all the sisters, the mothers, my wife, my Sarawule wife, Janaba, and all the mothers out there, you know.
Thank you.
Fatu Jau, happy Mother's Day to you.
Thank you, brother.
So, Brother Marong, I'm going to hand
Yes,
it
sir.
over the mantle to you.
All right.
With the conversation tonight with Aboubacarr Ba Tambadou. Welcome back. Before the people, by the people.
All right. Hello to viewers, to my co-panelists, and thank you, Father Mos, and welcome Aboubacarr Tambadou, former Minister of Justice of the Republic of the Gambia. So as we know, you know, there was a lot of conversation, and Ba, Honorable Minister, former Minister, said he would like to come in and have a conversation with the viewers and the people at large, and you know, share his side of the story and what happened, and that's why he's here today. And before we move forward, I like to, you know, all the time, you know, put emphasis that this platform is independent, and we wanted to work with everyone across the spectrum. So folks are invited to share what they know, and the viewers makes, you know, their choice, and we ask the questions, and we give the opportunity to answer. So with that, Honorable Ba, we would like to welcome to you to the platform. And my first question to you is, who is Aboubacarr Ba Tambadou? And, you know, your professional background and where you were raised.
Thank you, Sawyang, and it's my pleasure to be back on this show. It's been a long time, and that's simply because when I left government, I no longer was under an obligation to be accountable to the Gambian people for my private life. But it seems as if my destiny and that of the Gambian people is so intertwined that even though I've been out of office for the last 5 years, I am finding myself in a situation where I still have to render some account to the Gambian people. Now, before I go any further, I don't know, Musa Sawyang, if you can, I'm getting distracted by the comments. So if you can keep the comments to I don't know if you can keep them for me. Is there any way you can do that? Because I am talking and also my attention is being caught by some of the comments. I don't mind the comments, but so long as you see them and I don't see them, if that's possible. But if not, I'll continue, except that it will occasionally distract my attention.
My advice to you is ignore the comments and focus on the substance of your answer and the questions that the panelists raised to you. So we all, one way or the other, someone will make some comments, but we try to be grounded on what is the task at hand. And I will advise you to do the same thing. So I mean, I don't think Musa. I don't think we can hide the comments, but
I cannot do that. Don't listen on.
yeah. So you can just focus on what is at
Okay,
stake.
that's
here.
fine. That's fine. No, I mean, okay, I will proceed on that basis. I mean, Sariang, I'm not sure I need a long introduction. I think if there was any time that any part of Gambia didn't hear my name, this is certainly not the time. So everybody knows what I did as a minister in the Gambia, and so there's no need really to provide a long introduction. But I am here to engage with you, to engage with the Gambian community, particularly your audience in the diaspora. I am here to answer their questions, to clarify the issues about the about the Republic report, in which I was prominently featured. And I would like the opportunity to, of course, as I said, clear the air, because I know there's been a lot of information around. There's a lot of misinformation, but there's also a lot of disinformation. And I'm here to clear the air, and I would welcome your questions, the questions from your audience. I'm all yours today.
All right, thank you. Mr. Tambadou, my first question to you is, during your tenure as Minister of Justice, have you participated in any part or negotiated on behalf of your family members, or were any of your family members purchase assets of former President Jammeh?
I think that question needs to be contextualized. The short answer is no. The short answer is no. But for the understanding of your audience, I need to make certain things clear. The sale of, for convenience, we will label them as Jammeh assets. They don't belong to the Jammeh. They don't belong to Jammeh. They were forfeited by the state, so they belong to the state. But for convenience of description, I will just refer to them as the Jammeh assets. The Jammeh assets were disposed of by sale at different points. You are aware that the Ministry of Finance was in charge of the aircraft that were sold. The Sheriff Division was responsible for the selling of the cattle. The Jammeh Commission itself disposed of some vehicles and tractors. And the government itself, through the ministerial committee that was established by the President of the Republic, His Excellency Aboubacarr, disposed of properties, landed properties that were forfeited to the state. And so, as far as the landed properties are concerned, I can assure you that no member of my family or myself have ever purchased any of these properties. Now, regarding the other items as well, to the best of my knowledge, I am not aware of any member of my family who has purchased the cattle or the vehicles or tractors that were sold by the Jammeh Commission, and certainly I was not even interested. I have never even seen the pictures of those vehicles and tractors, let alone express an interest to purchase them. Yeah.
Thank you. Faramos, you can go ahead.
Mr. Ba, my first question would be, and I want to kind of give a background. In the Gambia, most of us believe that Gambia is a very corrupt country and that officials always use corrupt activities to either enrich themselves. In that vein, for the past 3, 4, 5 years, there has always been these rumors that all these Jammeh assets, Gaiden Jai Aferi Sedoko, we all heard what Kurang, when he came out and made a lot of statements in regards to these Jammeh assets. So most people believe, most Gambians believe, that this whole Jammeh assets thing is shrouded in secrecy. Then come Mustafa. Mustafa is someone that most Gambians believe that he's one journalist, that he does his homework and he's very honest. Most people believe that. So when this information came out from Mustafa saying that indeed whatever the rumor was out there, it's true. And how did he go about it? He came out with an article, and the article says, assets of Gambia former dictator go for a song. That's what Mustafa said. He went on in the next paragraph. Assets forfeited to the state, but the process of recovering is marked with alleged corruption. Officials selling assets to friends, family, and themselves, prices on fraction of what it's worth. That's what Mustafa said. That was his opening salvo. Mr. Tambadou, the next line, the next paragraph, he said, pulling the rug on the court's feet. What Mustafa went on to say was, the former Attorney General basically manipulated the courts. And how did he go about doing it? And again, I'm rephrasing here. You went out there to make sure that the TDA lands to be unfrozen. The courts decided not to do that. According to Mustafa, you manipulated the system to take the court ruling to another court to get the very ruling that you wanted. And he said, went on, in the process, the very person that was hired to sell these assets, according to Mustafa, you went around it, terminate that person's services, and bring in someone else to do the bidding for you. And that person is Alpha Capital. That to me was the thrust of what Mustafa said. Ba, what say you to these allegations?
Wow, that's a very long preamble and the ultimate question. So I'll endeavor to cover all the different parts of the question, Musa. And please, if I omit any aspect of it, do please remind me. So let me start with the allegations of widespread corruption in the Gambia over the last 3-4 years, as you said. You know, corruption is about perception. And that is why when organizations like Transparency International are making their assessments from country to country, they call it the Corruption Perception Index. Because it's about what people perceive to be the state of corruption in any particular country. And so speaking purely on the basis of perception and not fact, because I can't prove I can't prove the extent of corruption in government. Obviously, it exists. To what extent it exists, the degree of corruption, I don't know. But what I know is that there has been an increased perception of corruption in government in the Gambia, as you said, over the last 3-4 years. Now, of course, it's a cause for concern. And I think this is where we have to situate Mustafa's report. Mustafa's report is coming in the context of a heightened perception of corruption in the country. People are complaining about it all the time. But it's one thing to allege corruption, it's another thing to prove it in court. And that is why in more developed countries like where you are in the US, you see all these sting operations by law enforcement agencies. You see all these electronic surveillance equipments, wiretapping, secret recording. It's because they look for evidence. And we in countries like the Gambia, where we're not so advanced, we rely mostly in our investigative activities on human intelligence. And if you don't have people who will come forward, the paper trail is usually not reliable. It's difficult to pursue people for corruption. But if we limit it to the perception, I agree with you that there is a perception that corruption is widespread in the Gambia. And one way to dispel that perception is for the government to constantly engage with the citizenry to address where allegations are made, to at least make the effort so that people can see that reasonable efforts have been made to investigate. But it is not all allegations that are also to be investigated. You have to have a minimum threshold, minimum evidentiary threshold to pursue those investigations. One of the things that I did, Musa, when I was Attorney General is, as part of my effort to transform the Gambia's governance architecture, I wanted to make sure that when allegations are made against people, that we don't rush to convict them even before it is proven in court. I always believe that people have to be treated fairly, that those who are accused are brought through due process, tried in open court, and acquitted or convicted as the case may be. And so if we are hasty in our judgments about allegations, we risk falling back into the good old days when Jammeh would actually just act on the basis of a mere allegation. And I think we should try to change ourselves and our own mindsets about that mentality. That's the first point I will make about the perception of corruption. The second one is, before I go into Mustafa's specific allegations, allow me to say a word or two about Mustafa. I personally have had great respect for Mustafa's work. He will tell you that. I have had a very good relationship with him. He knows me well and I know him well. And he has done good work in the past, especially by Gambian standards. And I think we will all give him that credit. But it does not mean that Mustafa is infallible. He is only human. And sometimes there are factors that influence our thinking. There are issues that cloud our judgment. And I believe in this particular case, insofar as the report concerns my person, I think Mustafa has fallen well short of the standard that we have come to expect of him. And I am sure that Mustafa will be the first to admit that he has disappointed himself, particularly in the manner in which he has conducted this investigation. Just as a matter of background, talking about the manner in which the investigation was conducted, I am aware that Mustafa has been conducting the investigations on the Jammeh assets for almost 2 years. Now, I cannot still get my head around the fact that having spent almost 2 years on these investigations, Mustafa only reached out to me 5 days before he published his article. 5 days. And like I said, I have had a relationship with Mustafa. They reached out to me on the 25th of April, which was on a Friday, and sent me a long list of questions. Then I responded and said, what's my deadline to respond to these questions? And they wrote back and said, you have until Wednesday, the 30th of April. You know, I have a very busy travel schedule. I travel all over the place. And luckily, I am here in my base, so I hadn't traveled. But if I had been away on my travels, it would have been extremely difficult for me to provide the responses that I did to Mustafa. But in any event, I feel I was ambushed. 5 days, and he wanted the response by 30th April. Nevertheless, in the spirit with which I have carried myself out in office, openness, transparency, accountable, I thought this was a perfect opportunity for me to set the record straight about these Jammeh assets. And that there has been a lot of rumors going back and forth. So I provided my responses to Mustafa on the 30th of April this year, only for me to discover was that Mustafa has published his article on the same day. Now, anybody who has seen my rejoinder, which I issued immediately after the Republic report, I didn't want people to accuse me of distorting any facts. So I reproduced verbatim Mustafa's questions and my responses to those questions. And you can see how comprehensive and detailed those responses are. And for me to have submitted those responses to Mustafa on the 30th of April, only to see Mustafa publish his article on the same day, it raises questions about whether Mustafa even looked at my responses or looked at them with any sense of seriousness. Now that worried me a lot. That's the first point I wanted to make. The second point about the allegations in the report, in terms of what Mustafa did not allege against me and what he alleged against me. Because again, as I said, there's been a lot of misinformation. So let's look at what Mustafa did not allege against me. Mustafa did not say that I was involved in embezzlement of funds. He didn't say that. He did not say that I was involved in conversion. He did not say that I had undervalued a property or I had undervalued properties, except in one case, which I am sure we will come back to. So Mustafa did not make any of these allegations. And I am so pleased that the government has finally released or published the list of properties that were sold while I was still in office as Attorney General. I couldn't have been more pleased about that. We now have seen the properties. I have always said they were 44 while I was there. The list that was published contained 44 properties, of course. So I'll come back to the list. Now, Mustafa didn't say all of this. So what Mustafa said are conflict of interest issues that he raised as being the allegations against me. And the first one, Musa, as you said, was that I manipulated a court process to obtain an unfreezing order from the High Court and thereafter sacked or terminated the receiver who was appointed by the court and replaced him with another receiver in the name of Alpha Capital, who is run by my friend, Mr. Alpha Barry.
Mm-hmm.
The first part is the issue of manipulating the freezing order. It's another unfortunate reporting because I did share with Mustafa the facts on this. I have said that the decision to go to court and unfreeze those assets was a cabinet decision. It was a decision by the government of the Gambia and not Ba Tambadou as Attorney General. And I am so pleased that in the edition of the Standard newspaper of Friday, 9th of May, just 2 days ago, the former Vice President, Alagie Kurang, has confirmed the decision that Cabinet took to unfreeze the TDA lands at the time. So if you look at the Standard newspaper of Friday, the 9th, 2 days ago, Mr. Kurang confirms what I'm just saying to you, that indeed Cabinet had discussed and decided to unfreeze the TDA lands that were frozen. We're not talking about all the Jammeh lands. We're just talking about a category of the Jammeh lands which fell within the tourism development area, which was allocated to Jammeh by the government of the Gambia at the time. But Mustafa could have done better with his reporting. He could have gone to confirm the response that I gave him about the decision of Cabinet to unfreeze the TDA lands. And the purpose for the unfreezing were two. I will summarize. One was to encourage investors and give them land. A prominent one was FTI Group, who had plans to come to the country and build a 5-star hotel. And they had come, they had met with the government. I know, Musa, you are old enough, and Coach, of course, and Fatu, you are old enough to remember FTI. They were in the Gambia in the 90s. They invested in the tourism sector. At one point, they were even sponsoring Steve Biko Football Club at a time when Steve Biko, I remember, brought in Jules Bokande, the late Jules Bokande, as their coach. It was FTI that was sponsoring Steve Biko during that period. But anyway, FTI wanted to come back to the country to build a 5-star hotel and do other investments. Now, the second reason for the government's decision to unfreeze the TDA lands was to start to build infrastructure in preparation for the OIC summit that was impending. The government, of course, was aware of the Gambia's position as host of the next OIC summit, and so the government wanted to identify a location in the TDA area to build the infrastructure for the OIC summit. So these were the reasons, the two reasons that the government gave, and they instructed me to go to court to lift the assets. So I went to my ministry, met with my team. We looked at the application and submitted an application. Musa, I might have lost you for a minute. Am I still?
Yeah,
can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
You can hear me.
Yeah,
Okay,
we can hear
all right.
you.
So the Ministry of Justice, acting on the instruction of Cabinet, filed an application to unfreeze the TDA lands. And so there we are. I left the Gambia to go to Mecca on Hajj. I was in Mecca when my Solicitor General sent me an email to inform me that the decision was denied by Justice Sao. And I asked them to send me the decision to take a look, because we were surprised. We were surprised by the denial of the decision. I don't want to go into the legal arguments because it will bore your audience. But in essence, the reason why we were surprised was that it was the government that applied to the court to freeze Jammeh's assets, including land in the TDA area. And the reasons we gave was the fear of dissipation of those assets under the Anti-Money Laundering Act. So the Anti-Money Laundering Act gives the government the possibility to go to court, seek a court order to freeze assets while investigations are going on into the activities of a suspect or an accused. So we went and we were surprised when the decision came out and the judge refused. When the judge refused, I had a discussion with my team, and Mustafa also said in his report that instead of appealing that decision, we went around and submitted a fresh application and manipulated a favorable decision from that application. So, Musa, I have sent to you some documents which I would like to refer to, just so that your audience will follow step by step. Do you have those documents with you, Musa?
Yeah, I do.
I want you to look at document that I marked as 1A.
Yes, I do.
The document marked 1A has the title AG versus Yahya Jammeh ruling.
Correct.
Now, Musa, can you please read the name immediately under that title?
It's Chorno Marena.
It's Chorno Marena, and then what comes after him?
To you, July 31st, 2018.
What date?
July 31st, 2018 at 4:15 p.m.
Yeah, Mr. Chorno Marena was the Solicitor General at the time, and he sent me an email to inform me about the decision of the court. And please, Musa, read the 2 lines in Mr. Marena's email to me.
AG, please find attached a copy of the ruling delivered by Justice Amina Saho. She has denied the application to unfreeze the TDA lands.
Now move to the middle of the page, which I have also highlighted, and tell me whose name you see there.
Aboubacarr Ba Tambadou, is that the one?
Yes. And then immediately underneath that, what does it say?
To Chorno Marena, CC, Binga, and one other person.
And what's the date on that?
It was August 2nd, 2018, 4:37 p.m., 2 days after the original email.
Yes, I would like you to read my response to Mr. Chernomino, the Solicitor General, please.
You said, SG, as discussed, we need to explore our options in response to this unfortunate ruling. I already note a number of legal and factual errors from just cursory reading of the decision. An appeal is a very tempting option, but timing is crucial here, and so we need to balance the competing interests to our advantage. Kindly request DCL. What's DCL?
Director of Civil Litigation. I will come to that.
Okay. Kindly request DCL to prepare a short memo to me with the different options at our disposal, bearing in mind the need to urgently overturn this decision in the shortest possible time. Regards.
Now you will see from this exchange between the Solicitor General and myself, I have mentioned the option of an appeal. And so I have asked my team at the Justice Ministry to look at the options available to us, including the possibility of an appeal. But I also alerted them to the fact that we need to act urgently. Now, the reason why we needed to act urgently was because, again, I have to provide this context. When the Jammeh Commission was established, they were initially given 3 months to complete their investigations. During that period, the government had assured the investors, including FTI, that as soon as the Jammeh Commission investigations are concluded, the TDA lands will be unfrozen, and FTI will be allocated a place to build their 5-star hotel. And to be honest, again, the government, in all sincerity at the time, this was 2018, it was still the coalition government, they were only interested in meeting the huge expectations of the Gambian people. The potential for job creation was something that was really tempting for the government. They wanted to showcase to the Gambian people that this new government is bringing in more investors, etc. And so we were eager to impress. Now, when the Jammeh Commission proceedings started prolonging, 3 months became 6 months, 6 months became 9, 9 became 1 year, 1 year became 15 months, etc. Now, throughout this period, groups like FTI, who are huge investors, if you Google FTI, you will see they are the 4th biggest store operator in Europe. Now, these huge companies, they're not like small companies who just get up the next day and start planning their investments. They have boards, they have approval processes. It's a whole process. And because we kept telling them soon, 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 the Jammeh Commission proceedings was getting longer, and that's when the government decided that we should apply to unfreeze the TDA land so that we can allocate to investors like FTI. So when this happened, we were under pressure to get a freezing order. Now, Musa, I want you to look at the next document on the back, which is Mark 2A.
Yeah.
Now, DCL is the Director of Civil Litigation. So when you mention that my email was sent to Cherno, Marina, and CC Binga, Binga is DCL. Now, there's an email, and please, can you read the name on the email at the top?
Yeah, it says Binga. Binga.
And to who is the email address?
To me, meaning you and one other person.
What's the date?
August 2nd, 2018 at 2:47 p.m.
Now, I keep underscoring the issue of the date here because you will remember that when SG Marina called me or sent me the email, it was dated the 31st of July. Now, 31st of July is the last day of the court term. The High Court in the Gambia goes on vacation. And in the summer, they go on vacation from 1st of August to 30th of September. That's normally the period that they go on vacation. From 1st of August to 30th of September. So when Justice Saha gave her decision on the last day of the court term, we were looking at our options during the court term, which fell on the 2nd of August. Now, Musa, with your indulgence, this is a bit long, but I would want you to read the email from Mr. Binga to me on the 2nd of August.
Legal, primary 6 education. This one is lengthy. But let me
Well,
try.
no, just read it. It's not legal, but just read it.
It says, Dear AG, following our call yesterday, please find below my thoughts on the filing of an appeal. After reading through the ruling, the judge based her order mainly on the lack of any evidence to show that the Attorney General had concluded his investigation or that the Commission had made certain findings as pertain to the ownership of these properties. He went on, she drew contrast to the application to unfreeze the bank accounts where evidence was led to show that the bank accounts actually did not belong to Jammeh and as such needed to be taken off the freeze order. I believe these were hints by the court which we could take heed to. That was the first paragraph. And it went on, I believe this is indeed in line with your instructions conveyed through SG for GTB to seek a cancellation by the Ministry of Lands. Before delving into that, I believe an appeal might prove less attractive option to that contained in your initial instructions. Reason being that an appeal filed today will only come up for mention in October after the vacation. Before the records of proceedings are prepared and sent to the court, brief orders and a ruling delivered, it could easily stretch into December 2018. On the other hand, with current approach, we have conveyed the ruling to GTB by way of covering letter subsequent to a meeting with them. They have this morning responded, raising the issue of the illegality of the leases and requested our legal advice on proceeding with the matter. Lands has been copied in this letter and we intend to forward same to Lands for their response. It is anticipated based on discussion that the response will be acknowledgement of the illegality of the leases and a request for their cancellation. This is a purely administrative matter which is within the purview of theirs and our Registrar General's authority and has the effect of regularizing land ownership, given that the leases in the first place were null and void. On the basis of this above, we intend to then make our application to the court on similar grounds as the application to unfreeze the bank accounts on the basis that the concerned properties have now been found not to belong to the respondent and all administrative procedures have been complied with to regularize this error. As such, there is a need to take them off the list of frozen assets. Furthermore, given that this is not a regular injunction affecting all parties, but rather a restraining order barring the respondent from dealing with said properties, nothing bars the state from carrying out administrative procedures over said lands. We intend to file this application accompanied by a certificate of urgency for it to be heard ASAP this vacation and do not anticipate any difficulty in this being done. We hope you find the outlined strategy amenable and look forward to receiving your further instructions. Thanks, Binga.
Now, the reason why I am making reference to these exchanges is to show a few things. That one, decisions that we are taking at the ministry were taken after consultations between myself and my legal team, in which cases I would seek their views, their opinion, their advice, and they would give me options, and then I will make the final decisions. The buck stops with me. So I take full responsibility for any decision that came out of the ministry at the time. But the idea is to show that these issues were discussed among senior management at the ministry and the decision taking on what steps we will take next in terms of the application. And I said this to Mustafa. You know, the allegation that if you submit 2 applications on the same matter before the High Court is an abuse of process is incorrect. It's not automatically an abuse of process. And you can see clearly that what we have done here is to look at the decision that Justice Saho gave, went back to the drawing board, look at the options that we have, including the option of an appeal, and decided to adopt a different legal strategy. Now, law offices, lawyers always have strategies. They may have their first option, option 1, option 2, option 3, and that's normal. So in this case, we opted for another alternative process. And on the basis of the advice that I received from my senior management, I agreed with their assessment. And then we submitted a fresh application before the High Court. But the application fell during the summer vacation. It was not a case of us waiting until Justice Saho went on vacation, then we filed. No. Justice Saho gave her judgment or decision on the last day of the term. And then the next day, the summer recess started. So if we are to submit our new application, unfortunately for her, it fell within the vacation period. And we submitted the application. The application was assigned to a new judge during the vacation, Justice Jaite. Now, the Ministry of Justice has no say as to which judge gets assigned which case. In fact, no lawyer, private or in the state law office, has any say as to which judges get assigned which cases. That is the exclusive prerogative of the Chief Justice. It is only the Chief Justice who assigns cases to judges. And I think the people should understand this aspect of our legal process. Whoever files a case before the High Court, be rest assured that it is the Chief Justice who will assign your case to a judge based on his wisdom. It was the Chief Justice who assigned the case to Justice Jaite. And Justice Jaite has issued a rejoinder to the Republic story, saying that he decided our application on the merits of the facts presented before him. But he also went further to say that he was misquoted by the Republic. He never said that he was blindfolded. And he requested for a correction of that part of the Republic story. So Justice Jaite was very clear that he was not blindfolded and that he acted on the basis of the evidence and the application and the facts presented before him. Now, this is what happened. There was no manipulation of a court process. There was no backdoor channel. We didn't circumvent any processes. We exercised our legal options and submitted a fresh application on behalf of the state, which has instructed the ministry to unfreeze the TDA lands. So that first part of Mustafa's story is inaccurate. And if only he had consulted lawyers who are familiar with the Gambia's legal system, they would have explained this in more detail to him. He didn't do this, fair enough. But the second part of his allegation.
So Mr. Tamiro, I don't want to interject. So like I think the goal of the format is for all the panelists to be able to have questions and for you to have a little bit of break and Musa to be. So I think reading the document take a little bit of time. So if we could minimize our questions or our answers to straight up, what in a broad summary, like what Musa asked, what could you have done? And I think that is very important in terms of timing because we're already into an hour and a half into the program and we have 2 folks who haven't even asked a question yet. So it's very important that we kind of minimize our answers to a minimum. So thank you.
Yeah. No, you will find out that this will be the longest answer that I will have because I needed to go through the motions about the legal process because it was a legal process that was raised in the article. And so I felt that I needed to explain this in clear terms to show that there was no form of manipulation of the legal process whatsoever. You won't hear a longer or as long a response in my subsequent answers. So the second part is that we sacked the court-appointed receiver and appointed Alpha Capital to sell the assets. Again, that's an incorrect report. When the High Court was granting the freezing order that the Ministry of Justice submitted to the court, we were the ones, it was the Ministry of Justice that identified the receiver, Augustus Pom. It was the Ministry of Justice that discussed with Augustus Pom and negotiated for a fee. It was the Ministry of Justice that thereafter, in its application for the freezing order, specifically requested the court to appoint Augustus Pom as an interim receiver. So that is a receiver on a caretaker basis until the investigations that the state was conducting were completed. So the receiver Augustus Pom was, for all intents and purposes, and to avoid any doubt, a receiver that the Justice Ministry identified, went to court and asked the court to appoint for the state. Now, the court gave the freezing order and appointed Augustus Pom as interim receiver, just as the state requested. The application for the freezing order was made under the Anti-Money Laundering Act. And the provision that we relied on for that provides that a court's freezing order is only valid for 180 days. So 180 days from the date of the freezing order, the order will expire. Unless the state goes back to the state, to the court, and asks the court to extend that period for another 180 days. So it's on a 6-monthly basis. 180 days is 6 months. And when that expires, we have to go back to the court and get an extension. Otherwise, the order will elapse. And that's why we kept going back to the court after every 180 days. Now, when the court issued the last extension for the 180 days, during that period, during that last 180 days, the Jammeh Commission issued its report and submitted it to the government. In the report, the Jammeh Commission specifically said, and this is contained in volume 4, that the receiver who was appointed by the court on an interim basis, that is Augustus Pom, should be replaced. It was the Jammeh Commission that specifically made that recommendation. And I have to say that if that was not a recommendation from the Jammeh Commission, we would in all likelihood have allowed Augustus Pom to continue with the receivership. But this was the Jammeh Commission's recommendation. Now, when the Jammeh Commission made this recommendation, we had two options. We could have gone to the court and say, this is the recommendation of the Jammeh Commission, so please immediately terminate the receivership of Augustus Pom. We didn't do that. We opted for the second option, which is to allow the 180 days to elapse and then naturally end the mandate of Augustus Pom. And that is what we did. So we did not terminate the mandate of Augustus Pom. He was not sacked. We allowed his mandate to elapse together with the freezing order, which was valid for 180 days. And then we acted on the recommendation of the Jammeh Commission and replaced Augustus Pom with another receiver, Alpha Capital. I think I have exhausted the first part of your question. Perhaps I'll wait to hear the other parts.
Yeah, I'm going to let my colleagues to come in. But very quickly, though, you mentioned Augustus Pom, the Jammeh Commission coming out and basically said he needs to be replaced. Did they give any reason why they wanted Augustus Pom to be replaced?
Not in the report. Not in the report. They did not provide any reason. But if you ask me, from my experience, I perhaps think the Jammeh Commission wanted to avoid a conflict of interest. And that may be the most reasonable explanation for me. But Sorry?
What does that mean? A conflict of interest between Augustus?
Well, if Augustus Pom were appointed as the interim receivers for the assets that were frozen, and then now the Jammeh Commission has requested for the government to forfeit these properties. I don't know. I'm just saying that could be the reason. I don't want to second guess the commission, but I don't want to spend time on legal reasonings here, especially when it is not founded on a finding of fact in the report. Okay. So the short answer for you is the Jammeh Commission did not provide a reason for Augustus Pom to be replaced.
Bob Samba.
I like how Musa said, I'm going to let my colleagues come and then ask a question anyway. But, Ba, I've listened carefully and I've tried to read everything because there have been a lot of moving parts. Let's go to the Augustus Pom issue. The recommendation by the commission is subject to acceptance or refusal by the cabinet because the government can say, you know what, we do not accept these recommendations. Yeah. Why would the government not accept the recommendation not to use Augustus Pom, but went on to have, what's his name? Alpha Barry's company. Alpha Barry, for my own view, is a close family member to the then former Vice President of the Gambia, Ms. Fatmata Jammeh. Did that have any basis on his appointment? Because there is nothing that has been said, either by the commission yourself, I've listening to all these people, that is closely being negative towards the performance of Augustus Pom. But here we go and appointed somebody whose company was newly registered, just a little bit after the change, who also happens to be, interestingly, a family member of the Vice President of the Gambia. And now we've shifted. Was there any time, I know you're not going to accept this, or anybody in the government is going to accept this, where this was looked at as being problematic? If Alpha Barry was a Musa Jeng, would government have moved the way they moved in saying, you know what, we are going to accept that recommendation by the commission, but we are going to go with Musa Jeng?
The starting point is that when government set up commissions of inquiry, the expectation is that you accept the recommendations that the commission gives unless there are compelling reasons not to. And that's why you see in most of these white papers that the government issues, the rate of acceptance of the recommendations are 98, 99%, because inevitably you have instructed an independent entity to look into something for you. They have looked into that. They have come up with their recommendations. The expectation is that you will accept those recommendations unless, as I said, there are compelling reasons. And this is an exception rather than the norm. And so it was in that spirit that the government accepted all the recommendations of the Jammeh Commission, including the recommendation to replace Augustus Pom, and that's what the government did. And there are one or two recommendations that the government didn't accept, and the government gave its reasons for that. Now, with the appointment of Mr. Alpha Barry and his family links with the former vice president, at the time that Mr. Alpha Barry was being appointed, or his company, the former vice president, Fatmata Tambadou, was no longer in office. She was not the vice president at the time. She was not in government at all. Now, I know that in Gambia, it's a challenge when people hold public office and their family members have government contracts or have government employment, then the automatic perception is that there is nepotism. But family members should not be punished for having family, for having members of their families in high office in government if they are qualified, etc. But in this case, even the former vice president was no longer in office, so there was no link between the appointment of Alpha Capital and the former vice president. Totally divorced from I mean, there was a total divorce of the two, no link at all. Have I answered your question, Coach?
Well, you've answered it, but I also believe that just because of you are not in office anymore doesn't mean that you've had influenced the process before you were left. But I'll go to another issue on this matter. What justification was it? Because when you guys had Augustus Prom, he was charging you guys 3%. Is that right?
No, it's not.
It's not? Okay, you'll come and explain. And then we went to now Alpha Capital, and you're talking about 10%. So what's the disparity, and what was the charges from both entities?
Yeah, I'm glad you raised this issue. Not a lot of people saw that. They missed it. Now, when we negotiated with Augustus Prom in my office before we froze the order and appointed them on an interim basis, we negotiated a fee. Augustus Prom charged us 10%. We had back and forth, you know, negotiations the way they are. They held their ground and they said they can't do it under 10% because it requires a lot of work. They have to recruit extra staff. They are running costs, etc. I said, okay, we will revert to them. When Augustus Prom left, I gathered my senior team again and I said, this is what they are charging. What do you guys say? They said, well, you know, this is what they charge. This is the standard industry fee. It's between 5 to 10%. But the government has had a dealing with Augustus Prom in the past when they gave them the liquidation of the Carnegie company. You remember Carnegie, the company, the Australian company that was mining in the country. The relationship of that company with the government during Yaya's days didn't go well. So the government instructed and appointed Augustus Prom as the receiver, and 10% was paid to Augustus Prom. So when we were going to court, so we accepted the 10%. And that's why when we went to court for the freezing order and for the appointment of Augustus Prom, the court approved the payment of 10% to Augustus Prom. Now, where the 3% comes in is when the Jammeh Commission, in the course of its proceedings, took away from the Bazainu family, some close associates of Jammeh, over the management of the 2 hotels that were owned by Social Security, Ozone Bay Hotel and Sun Beach Hotel. And so the Jammeh Commission decided, because the state has already appointed Augustus Prom as receiver for all the other assets, they decided to appoint Augustus Prom as receiver over those 2 hotels as well. Again, I guess innocently, Augustus Prom was under the understanding that they are supposed to charge 10% on those 2 hotels as well. And they were charging 10% on those 2 hotels because they were giving 10% with the other assets that they were also managing. Now, when the Jammeh Commission discovered that, I believe the Jammeh Commission was of the view that you have already had your infrastructure in place for the management of all these other assets. We're only adding these 2 extra hotels. Don't charge 10%, charge 3% because this is just additional work which is added to what you already have. And so the Jammeh Commission imposed a 3% commission on Augustus Prom for the 2 hotels that it gave to Augustus Prom to manage. But Augustus Prom was always paid 10% because we were told, and that's what Augustus Prom told us, and I think this was also true, because when we were discussing with Mr. Alpha Bay as well, he also charged 10%. And I recall clearly, he gave us the same reasons or substantially similar reasons as the one that Augustus Prom gave us. And which is why, and several people confirmed this to me later, that it was standard industry practice for receivers to be given between 5 to 10% commissions. And that is what we did. Augustus Prom was paid 10%. Alpha Capital was paid 10%. And in the case of Alpha Capital, even in the shares and the dividends, etc., he was not paid 10%. He was paid 5%. We reduced that. Through our negotiations with him, we decided that, look, okay, for the properties, we'll pay you 10%, but for these other ones, we'll pay you 5%. And there was an agreement. But 10% was paid to both Augustus Prom and Alpha Capital.
All right. Fadu, thank you. You're muted. You're muted.
Yeah, I'm just saying thank you, Ba, for appearing here for us. I think it's very important. I have so many questions in my head. My head is spinning. I don't even know where to start for you. You said the buck stops at you. So you did not see anything wrong. You did not ask any questions. You didn't ask the Jammeh Commission why, because you just said, well, they made that decision. You didn't ask them why not Augustus Prom. And you did not have any qualms when Augustus Prom and Alpha Capital are basically asking the same thing. What I just asked, the Wolofs will say, Fila Harijar, I don't know anything about any legal procedures. You did not have any qualms giving this assignment to Alpha Bari, not just Alpha Bari, with your friend who later became your wife, Binta Sise. I think when you first came in, I think I heard you say, oh, you are not in office, but still your private life is part of this discussion. Did I hear that right? What was the exact thing you said?
Your questions are legitimate. Go ahead. I will be happy to answer them. Go ahead.
No, I think I heard you say a comment that
no, forget about it. That was a passing comment. I will respond to your questions. Don't worry. So I think that's what you should be concerned about.
Not a passing comment, because I think, for you to have the audacity to say that, oh, I'm not in office anymore. I'm not Minister of Justice anymore. So anything that happened at Alpha Bari with my wife there, with all of Jammeh properties.
No, I didn't mean it that way, Fatu. You misunderstood me. No, I didn't say that. I
am the one. I'm the one emphasizing on that. I think
but ask your question so that I can help clarify. Don't ask with a
when you were speaking, I did not interrupt you. Whether my questions have basis or not, whether I'm speaking the fact.
Fatu, let's ask the question. We can't go back and forth with the guest. Ask the question. You have the right to ask the question, and he has the right to respond. So let's maintain that and make it.
I'm coming to my questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead. To my questions.
Okay, go ahead.
But I have to go to my questions according to my understanding of issues. I'm not a legal person. I will have to tell him how I got to my questions. Okay, in the first place, the TDA side that you decide to unfreeze quickly for FTI, what's the rush? So you, as a justice minister, didn't you see any ethical problems transferring this assignment from Augustus Prom to Alpha Bari and your wife? Number one. Number two, what was the hush? What's the rush for selling all $1 billion worth of Jammeh properties in secrecy when the Jammeh Commission and everything that was done, the TRRC, the Jammeh Commission was televised in the open? What took you guys so long? And what's so important that you refuse at the giving time to publish all those names? This is what the public has been looking for the longest time. You said the buck stops at you. Why didn't you ask the Jammeh Commission? Why is it that you said Augustus Prom is not qualified to do this receiving assignment? I was thinking you were going to say, oh, Alpha Capital did it for us for free or just 1%. I guess probably that's why they gave it to him. But hence you qualified and you reiterated that they all charge the same price. Why? Why do you think you, as a head of our legal department, a new democracy, somebody that we look up to for all the legal issues in the country, what's the rush? You cannot tell the government to wait because this is a critical matter. You cannot just rush into selling Jammeh stuff. And don't you have, is it not ethical for you for Alpha Bari and your wife to carry out the selling of these properties? Don't you have any issues with it?
Okay, I can answer now.
Some of them, yes.
Okay, let me start with your first question as to why we didn't ask the Jammeh Commission. Now, the government cannot ask the commission to be accountable to it. This was a totally independent commission that sat through its proceedings. It was not under the control or direction of the government. We made sure that the commission was totally independent, to the extent that even the secretary was brought from outside so that they can be independent. Normally, commissions of inquiry have secretaries from the public service. But we wanted the commission to be totally independent. Imagine a commission of inquiry prepares its report, submits it, and the government is asking it, why did you make this recommendation? Why did you make that recommendation? We cannot, because as soon as they submit their report, they become what we call functus. They no longer exist as a commission. They have a lifespan, and their lifespan is up to the point that they submit their report to the president. That's when the commission no longer exists in law. So how can you ask the commission why they... I can't see Fatija anymore. Did we lose her?
Yeah, but you can go ahead.
She'll be back. She'll be back.
Okay, well, I wanted her to hear my responses because I don't want her to come back and ask when I've already spent a lot of time answering.
No, go ahead.
So anyway, the Jammeh Commission submitted its report. That's when the government knew what was the content of that report. By the time we even go through that report to prepare our white paper, the commission no longer existed in law. So how were we going to go to the commission? Who were we going to ask why they did this or why they did that? It's like it's like the TRC makes its recommendations. They go away, and then you go and ask them, why did you do this? Why did you can't? That's not how things work. The government could not have gone to the commission and asked why they made that recommendation. That's one. Two, I think it's unfortunate that Fatou Jau's question about the involvement of my friend who later became my wife, it's very unfortunate that's the assumption. And I want her to be here so that she tells me how my wife was involved in this process. Who was my friend at the time? Because she's making that assumption, saying if I didn't find it unethical that my wife was working with Alpha Bay. But I want to know the basis of that assertion, the basis of that assumption. How did my friend at the time, who later became my wife, got involved with Alpha Bay in the sale of the assets? But let me go a step further. And she made reference to the fact that all the other commissions, the TRC, etc., were done openly, but this one was done secretly. Again, that is, I believe, another misunderstanding on her part. These properties were advertised. I keep saying I am so pleased that the government published the list of purchasers. How did all those people know about the sale of these properties? There are people from different parts of the country, from men, women. How did they know about these properties to even purchase them? Clearly, the properties were advertised in local newspapers for a period of time. And not only were they advertised in local newspapers, they were also advertised on a website that Alpha Capital created to advertise these properties so that those who are not in the country, who are outside the country, can have an equal opportunity to also purchase these properties. Now, coming back to the process, I think people need to understand how the process works so that they will know whether there was room for anybody else to be involved. Now, the properties were advertised in local newspapers. Potential purchasers were advised to submit bids. They were told to submit a bid. So, for example, a property was advertised with a guide price of $1 million. And the property is clearly identified. And the public was invited to bid for that property. And they were told how they should bid for that property, which is why it was called a closed bidding process. And how a closed bidding process worked was that if you, Musa and Seriang and Coach and Fatu Jau want to purchase those properties, you will indicate in your bid the identity of the property you are bidding for and the price that you are offering for that property. Then you will put that in an envelope and you will seal it in a manner that has been instructed in the newspaper advertisement, and you will send that sealed envelope to the office address that was in the newspaper advertisement. So Musa, for example, will put, if the property, the guide price that was advertised was $1 million, Musa is interested in the property, Musa will identify the property in his bid, he will put $1,100,000, put it in an envelope, seal it, send it to the address. Coach will put $1,200,000, put it in an envelope, seal it, send it to the address. Sariang will put $1,300,000, put it in an envelope, seal it, and send it to the address. Now, all of those envelopes from all the people who wanted to purchase these properties are taken to the office of the Solicitor General in the Ministry of Justice, with other senior officials of the ministry and the staff of Alpha Capital, and then the envelopes are opened one after the other. So they will open any envelope starting with Coach, they look at the amount, they note the amount and the property, they look at Sarian, they note his amount, they looked at Musa, they note his amount, and the offer to sell is made to the person with the highest amount of money. So if Coach or if Sarian's amount is 1.4 million, which was the highest amongst the bid, the property will be offered to Sarian for 1.4 million, so that Sarian will pay that and get the property. So that is how the process works. Now, how else can you have a sales agent in a process like this? What would be the role of a sales agent in a process like this when people are submitting bids in envelopes sealed and sent, where the receiver had advertised the properties on newspapers? What would be the role of a sales agent? It does not make sense. That's the point I'm trying to make here. So those who said that my friend at the time, who later became my wife, had a role, I wonder what role that was in a process that I have described to you now. I want people to just keep their minds open and tell me how they envisage a role for somebody else outside in a process like this. And the guide prices, by the way, the guide prices were based on a comparison of the valuations that was conducted by the government for the Jammeh Commission. So the Jammeh Commission asked the government valuers to value these properties, and they valued them. But what Alpha Capital did before advertising this property for sale, they conducted a second independent valuation. So they got an independent valuer to also value these properties. So what they did, they took the higher of the two valuations, which was the higher price, and then that was the guide price, so that whoever was submitting bids for the properties, you would be submitting a bid on the basis of the higher valuation for that property. And that is what happened. That is what happened. So I wish Fatu was here so that she can hear me, but her assumption that my friend, who was my wife, and saying it in such an audacious way is unfortunate, but that is not the case. And I have explained the process, and I don't know how somebody else can have a role in a process like this. Thank you.
All right, thank you. But my follow-up question was, you talk about the independence of the commission. My question to you was your ministry or any part of your office part of this sealed bidding process, per se, you or your Solicitor General or any of the companies, and how, if there was a committee within Ministry of Justice, how was that committee selected and composed of to open these sealed bid envelopes, look for the higher bidder, and award those, whatever item assets to those bidders. What if you could explain if you were involved, or your ministry, or if there is an independent committee, whether it's set up by your ministry or set up by the commission, Jammeh Commission, what is the composition of it and what is their power of oversight?
Yeah, the first answer I will give is that I have never been present at any of the occasions when any of these bids were open. I was too busy with several other things. The ministry was the heartbeat of the activities that were going on in our transitional justice program. Where would I find the time to be involved in opening bids? In fact, you can ask anyone at the ministry at the time, including the Solicitor General or the receiver himself. The receiver was only dealing with the Director of Civil Litigation, Mr. Binga. He was his main point of contact, unless he would come and brief me or the ministerial committee, or there was an issue he wanted advice on. But otherwise, on a day-to-day routine basis, the receiver was mostly dealing with staff at the Civil Litigation Department, especially Mr. Binga, the Director of Civil Litigation. In terms of the bidding and the opening of the bids and any protocols, well, no, it was simplified. The Solicitor General, together with other senior staff of the ministry, would be present in his office. The receiver and his team would come. From what I understand, then the bids would be opened by the Solicitor General himself, and they would look, then they would note the contents, and they would record this. So this is the procedure that was in place. So the ministry was involved, and the receiver staff were involved. On some occasions, when the properties or what was being sold was of a significant amount of money, the bidders were invited to be present when the bids were being opened.
That's
It
interesting.
has occurred a few times in the office of the Solicitor General, and in fact, there was one occasion when they took the opening of the bids to the Kayaba Beach Hotel, and they invited all the bidders and the public, because these were assets of significant value, and they wanted total transparency with respect to those assets. And that's why, on occasion, the bidders would be invited. On one occasion, I recall, the bids were open in front of the public and all the bidders at the Kayaba Beach Hotel. In fact, the office of the president even sent a representative on that occasion. On the other occasions of assets of other significant value, the Solicitor General and the bidders and the staff of Alpha Capital will be there. But otherwise, it's generally the Solicitor General and his staff and Alpha Capital and their staff who would together open these bids. I have never personally witnessed the opening of any bid. I was only informed of the results after.
Okay. I just want to, before I ask my second question, I wanted to give you an opportunity to clarify, because in your answer, you said you were too busy. I really don't think that's an appropriate answer. But in terms of impartiality and the independence, not your interference as the Minister of Justice, was that the reason why you didn't get involved, or you were a bit too busy? I just want to make sure you clarify that, because a lot of people are watching. So, I mean, was there a reason that you didn't get involved, because the ethics standard or conflict of interest of your office, or you were too busy?
No, I didn't say I was too busy in a condescending way, but I just want to be realistic. That was the reality. We were dealing with a lot of things at the same time, and really, as minister, I didn't see it appropriate to go and sit in a process where bids are being opened. I mean, really, it would have meant I was just too idle. And I had a Solicitor General that I trusted. He was senior enough to oversee that process, and I entrusted him with that process. But I had several other things that I was dealing with at the time, and that's what I meant by I was too busy. Not in any condescending way, but just to hit the point home that there were other things that I was also occupied with. I think Fatu is back now.
Thank you.
Fatu, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. I'm sorry, guys. You know, Sundays are not. I. Yes.
Okay.
You can go ahead and ask your second question, Fatu. So I've already asked one. So if you want to go back and ask him your second question, that's fine.
Yeah, but Fatu didn't get my responses. Fatu, you want me to repeat my responses, or you want to move on to your other question?
I don't think Fado is hearing. Fado, are you hearing us?
Maybe not. Sorry, go ahead.
All right. The second part of my question is, you've had Musa read the email exchanges between you and your Solicitor General, trying to make comparison of the dates. Now, the significance of that is, I guess, you're trying to make the collaboration between when the judges goes on leave and when you put in an application for appeal. And this has been a point of contention for us non-legal minds. In a more layman tone, like, I want you to be specific. The timing of it, was it just that when they inform you that Justice Amina Saho denied to unfreeze, and before I even go by, was there an application that was filed for Jammeh to forfeit those lands? Because I heard you on Coffee Time say the land belongs to the government. But was there that process that takes place before we talk about the appeal? First, I want you to answer that, then I will try to confirm with the date. So was there a process that was done prior to have that application gone to Justice Amina Saho to make a decision on freezing the TDA lands, or was there no application done prior to that?
I missed a huge part of your question, but I got the last part. So let me try to answer the last part. Now, at the time that we were making the first application before Justice Saho, we went on the basis that because the government no longer feared the dissipation of that category of frozen land, because that was the reason for the government to make the freezing order under the Anti-Money Laundering Act. We said to the court, we are afraid that if you do not freeze these properties, President Jammeh or his associates would dissipate these properties. They would sell them, they would give them away, etc. And we wanted to avoid that, so that's why we went for the freeze. So when we went to the court and said to Justice Saho, we are no longer afraid that the category of TDA land would be dissipated, that fear is no longer there, she denied the application nevertheless. So that's when we went back, and that's the content of the email from the Director of Civil Litigation to me, telling me the meetings that they had with staff of the Department of Lands, who advised that in any event, former President Jammeh's allocation of these lands was illegal, that he illegally acquired these lands, and therefore they are going to cancel the leases that were granted in favor of former President Jammeh. And it was on the basis of the cancelled leases that was conducted by the Lands Ministry. Then the Ministry of Justice got back with those new set of facts now, because this is now about Jammeh no longer having title because the leases have been cancelled. It's no longer about the fear of dissipation of the assets. So it was on the basis of these new facts that we presented a new application before the High Court, which was assigned to Justice Jaite, who granted the application. So there was consultations between the Justice Ministry and the Lands Department. And if you look at document number, Musa, I'm going to call your attention to document number 3A. If you look at 3A,
yeah,
it's the affidavit in support of the application.
Yes.
And the first line under the title affidavit in support, just read the first the first few lines until lands.
It says, I, Keba Sise, Director at the Department of Lands.
That's fine. The affidavit in support of the application was sworn to by Mr. Keba Sise, the director of the Department of Lands. And in his ruling, Justice Jaite made reference to the affidavit that was sworn to by Mr. Keba Sise. So just to say that this was an interministerial collaboration, it was the Department of Lands that canceled the leases, and therefore it was appropriate for the director of the Department of Lands to swear to that fact in the affidavit to support our application for the unfreezing of the TDA lands, because as far as the government was concerned, the leases were cancelled. Jammeh no longer had title. It was no longer Yaya Jammeh's. And it was on the basis of that decision, we went back to court to seek the freezing order. I see that Fatou Diaw is back.
Yes, I'm here. Ba.
Okay. Did you, I keep saying, you must have missed my responses to your questions. You want me to just summarize those for you again?
Yes, you can summarize it, and I'll add this to the questions that you can explain to why Alagie Kurang was pushed out, or why you guys decided to terminate. And also, ironically, you're talking about dissipation. I think you guys did it faster than even Jammeh and his folks could have done. You know, why couldn't you wait for the 180 days? Why couldn't you wait for the courts to come back to session? You know, why? I'm still confused. Why the rush? You know, so just look at it. In 100 and you guys quickly disposed of. We are upset not by you know, who got what and who got what assignment, but how these things were disposed of. You said you fear that if you don't attend to it quickly, it might just dissipate and Jammeh and his folks might do something. You guys did a better job in that than Jammeh, because all these things have disappeared. Bure, you know, over $1 billion. You gave it away, you know, a ceiling at a time. So yes, go ahead. And also please elaborate why Mr. Kurang was pushed out of the entire thing.
While you were away, I was saying that we couldn't ask the Jammeh Commission why they made that recommendation, simply because the government cannot do that. You cannot ask a commission why they have made a particular recommendation. And in any event, once the commission submitted their report to the government, they become functus in law. They no longer exist in law. So you cannot go to a member of the commission and say, why did you make this recommendation? Because the commission in law has dissolved. Okay, so that was the reason
why didn't you block the chance for Alpha Barry and your wife Binta? Couldn't you tell the commission too that Alpha is a friend and Binta is a friend and wife?
No,
I cannot.
But you've asked me. Let me answer.
Okay.
You've asked me. Let me answer. I'll come to that part. That's the second part.
Okay, just go ahead.
Okay, so the commission was dissolved. The government cannot go back to the commission and ask questions, because the commission no longer exists. And in any event, the government could not have done that because the commission was independent. It acted on its own. Secondly, now your question about the ethical or the ethics of Alpha Barry working with my wife, who was my friend at the time. Now, Fatou, you're making an assumption here. What is your basis for saying that my wife was working with Alpha Barry? I would like to know.
Is it your wife? The reports that we have is that Alpha Barry and your wife, they're the same company, right?
You see, but wait, that's not true. Now you can see in the Republic's report.
So how did her name came into the picture, or Alpha Barry? How did their names come into the picture then?
But let me answer. Now you can see in the report, the Republic has given you the shareholders of Alpha Capital, right? And you don't see her name there. And according to the Republic, Alpha Capital was established in 2017. That's the first point. Now, secondly, you're asking me why my wife's name is in the report, and that's your only basis for making the assumption that you're making?
Yes, and if you don't like that, but we want this thing to be in court. You're not going to be coming here as a lawyer, killing us with legal jargon. We are going to take this to court so that legal representatives can help us back and forth. So
Yes,
I'm not assuming anything. I'm going by the report that's out there. Your name is, your wife's name is mentioned, and Alphabari and TDA, and you know, on freezing of all these assets. I'm not giving it time. You are not going to elaborate on that here. If you do that, we are going to definitely go to courts for clarifications.
Let me clarify that. You
no
see,
intimidation here.
I have explained to, and I have given this response to Mustafa. I had said to him, I believe that the only reason why my wife, at the time who was not yet my wife's name, came up, because people must have seen her come to my office around the same time that the properties were being compiled to be disposed of by Alpha Capital. But she was coming to my office for a private family property that I was selling. And I gave to Mustafa the name of the purchaser of that property, Abdul Sanyang. I gave to Mustafa the phone number of the purchaser. I told Mustafa that I was willing to share a copy of the power of attorney that was given to my wife, who was not my wife at the time, and a copy of the deed of assignment that was executed in favor of the purchaser. We started, Alpha Capital was appointed around June. I instructed Binta, let me speak her name. I instructed Binta in July, both in 2019, to sell a family property that was located in Fayara Golf Course. And I gave to Mustafa the name and the number of the purchaser and all the details for him to make his additional investigations and either confirm or deny what I was telling him. So that is what I'm saying. Maybe that is the reason why Binta's name is in all of this, unfortunately, but she was conducting a private land transaction for me. And I have the name of the purchaser, I have his phone number, I have the power of attorney, and I have the deed of assignment that was executed for that land sale. And so that's why I keep saying people have confused two things. Binta had nothing to do with the sale of Jammeh's assets. And when you were offline, I had described how that process went about, that it was through a closed bidding process. And in order to summarize for you, what that meant was the properties were advertised, people were invited.
Where were they advertised?
Yeah, okay. Now you saw the list that was published by the government for the 44 properties that were sold. How do you think those people were aware or became aware of the sale of those properties?
You help us, because if you are selling,
now I'm telling you that they were
hold on, Fatu. Hold on. Let's exercise some type of decorum and constraint. Let's not be emotional. This is a brotherly conversation. He came here, he wants to set the record straight. You have the absolute right to ask the question. But to be fair to Mr. Tambadou, you need to give him opportunity. It doesn't work like that. We don't interject. Yes, we let them answer the question. Your second round, if you have another follow-up question, you can ask Tambadou. Because if it goes back and forth, then we will not, at least hit the goal that we wanted on this interview. And I just wanted to make sure I emphasize that. So if he doesn't ask, I feel like he didn't answer your question the first time around. The second time around, you can ask him a follow-up question. But we can't go back and forth. You need to give him opportunity to answer. Even if you felt that he didn't answer your question. That's how we do it. Everyone got 2 questions. Please. Thank you.
And I did not appreciate that, Mr. Sariang. Ba was the one who thought I missed his answers, and he has to reiterate and tell them to me back. And I have a right to do a back and forth. He is the one who volunteered.
It's okay.
I'm not angry. I'm not, I just have to ask him what I have to ask him.
No one is angry here. So let me Fatu, for your information, the properties were advertised. They were advertised in local newspapers in the Gambia, and they were also advertised in a website that Alpha Capital created for this. And that is how the people that you see on the list that was published by the government, insofar as the properties were, that's how they became aware of these properties. They were advertised indeed, and I can confirm this to you because we documented all those things. There is a file where the advertisements, the bids, etc. are all compiled. So be rest assured that they were advertised, and that's why I said, how do you think the people who purchased these properties became aware of them? Because they were advertised. Now, they were advertised for a closed bid, which means when you, Fatu, are interested in a particular property, what you would do is you identify the property, you indicate the amount that you are willing to pay for the property, because there is a guide price that is included in the advertisement. So say the property is advertised for 1 million. So if you, Fatu, are interested in the property, you will indicate the amount that you want to pay for that property. So you could offer 1.1 million. Then you will put it in an envelope and you would seal it in accordance with the instructions given to you in the advertisement. And then you would send it to the address that is indicated in the advertisement. Musa will do the same, Saryang will do the same. Everybody will offer their amount. When all the envelopes are compiled, then they are open, and the person who offered the highest amount is the person that the property is offered to buy. And that's why I'm saying the idea of having a sales agent in a process like this does not make sense, because this is how all the 44 properties that were sold under the supervision of the government through Alpha Capital, they followed exactly this same process. So there is no role for any outsider in a process like this. I hope that you understand the process that I have just described to you, and you can see for yourself how there can be a role for an outsider like my wife.
No. But the TRRC, all of Gambia, globally, everybody was watching it. The Jammeh Commission, globally, everybody was watching it. So why or how is it possible that the bidding or the selling of Jammeh's properties, number one, why a close bidding? Number two, yes, you can give an excuse that, oh yeah, we have it in an advertisement. Like you coming here today, I learned about it very late, because it was not properly shared so that everybody knows. I'm just giving you as an example. So you could have easily just do that somewhere. Why is it that probably some of my colleagues here knew when this close bidding was going on, or they've seen the applications or the advertisements? Why is it that the chunk of the population missed that? What is so sneaky about that? Why that closed kind of bidding? Why? For assets that are not Jammeh's, that are not yours, that are not anybody's. Why isn't the public behind? I know it, because I know it's somewhat advertised, but advertised in a way less than the Jammeh Commission is advertised, or the TRRC. The whole country knew about what was going on. So why is it so peculiar? Why this bidding so closed, and where was it advertised? I know you said it was advertised, but why is it that the population is not aware of it?
As you can see, the purchasers, the government has published the list. At least those who purchased were aware of the advertisements. And when we talk about closed bidding, we're talking about the process of the sale. I know you're shaking your head, but we're talking about the process of the sale. And you see, you have to divide.
I know what close bidding is. I know what close bidding is. Why would this be a close bidding? What is so particular or so secretive or private about it that it goes for a close bidding? I know what the sale process or close bidding is.
Okay,
I know that process.
So you would have preferred an open bidding where Fatija, you will raise your hand and say 10,000, and then Syrian says 15,000, and then Pasamba says 20,000.
Why not? Then I will know Pasamba is the one buying Jammeh's Benz, and I will know if it is a market value or not, because it's public property.
Yep, I respect your views, but we know that 2 valuations were conducted, so we know what the properties are valued. One was done by the government through the Jammeh Commission. A second valuation was done by an independent valuer, and the higher of the 2 valuations was used as the guide price, which was advertised in the papers. And to be honest, I am pleased. I am very happy with the process that Alpha Capital adopted, because what we see now is that the government has made almost 68% more money than they would have made on the basis of the valuations. Because what the closed bidding did was it provided a strategic advantage so that nobody knows what the other competitor is offering. Because in an open bidding, you offer 10,000, Musa will offer 20,000, coach will offer 30,000, and if nobody offers more than 30,000, coach takes home, the hammer falls. But in this process, and that is why we have been so successful. Have you seen the list that the government published together with the prices?
It's not successful. It just brought anger to us. Why the secrecy? It's not been successful at all. It's successful to those who wanted it and got them, who knew about the advertisement and got them, not for the public. Unless you're doing it for something else. If you're doing it for the Gambian public, you see what happened these past days. If you think the process was successful, do you think we will have this issue that just happened a few days ago?
No, I agree that I agree that certain things could have been done differently. For example, I believe that the list of purchasers could have been released much earlier. But there was a reason at the time why this list was not released. And I can speak for myself based on my first-hand experience. You see, now, 6-7 years after the fact, we can all sit comfortably in our homes and critique certain actions. But if we go back in those days, then contextualize the decisions that were made. This was a time when the change had occurred 2-3 years into the change. There were still a section of the population who were not totally sure about whether the public should know that they were the ones who bought Jammeh's assets. And so we thought in any event, they had a right to privacy of their investment. And that if you, Fatu, I'm sure you have investments, but you don't go out telling everybody that this is where you have invested your money. So that was the concern. Let me just learn, Fatu, just bear with me. That was the concern that we had. But even then, the concerns about privacy, I went to the National Assembly in 2020 and submitted this list to them. I personally did so. You ask any member of the National Assembly who was in that legislature in 2010, I gave them a copy of this list that was published now by the government, together with a full inventory of all the properties items that the Ministry of Justice took note of in Kanilai. Those were also given to members of the National Assembly, and any one of them will confirm this to you. So the list was shared with members of the National Assembly, but we were concerned about the privacy of individuals who had purchased these properties. Now, the point is this: if we get to a point where there is public demand for this list, it becomes a matter of public interest to release this list. And that is why in my interviews previously, I had encouraged the government to release this list. And that is why today I am saying I am happy that they have released this list. But protecting the privacy of individuals should not be equated with doing the sale process secretly. The sale process was not secret. It was advertised. People saw the advertisement. People sent in their bids. People who won the bids were informed. They paid the money, and the process was concluded. These are the things that happen, Fatu.
You are not there to protect the privacy or the business investments of
Fatu.
people.
So I think you answer your two questions, and I think we need to go to Musa, then to Coach. Then if you have a follow-up question, we can come back to you. Faramos, go ahead.
I had a question about Mamadi Kurang, but maybe we can come back to that later.
Yes, on his next second round, she can ask that question. Faramos, go ahead.
Yeah. Thanks again, Bob, for joining us. I mean, remember my original question, I said, the perception of corruption by the Gambian people sometimes is the foundation, and people really perceive that the whole process was corrupt. unfortunately. And the question that I ask is, we had an AMRC that was set up to be basically selling assets for government. But somehow this option was not really utilized, because we could have avoided paying, for instance, $89 million at the end of the day to a receiver if, let's say, for instance, it was given to AMRC as an entity, just like they were given, the responsibility to dissolve assets during the commercial bank days. Why wasn't that option kind of at least utilized?
That's a very pertinent question, Musa. And the first point I will make is this. I don't recall ever seeing the AMRC giving an account of their recoveries to the public. I don't know if you have, but we have never seen the AMRC give an account of the recoveries that they have made in the way that the government is doing now with these recoveries. That's one. Two, the AMRC was one of the public offices that the Jammeh Commission was specifically mandated to inquire into vis-a-vis their dealings with former President Jammeh. So the AMRC was a subject of the Jammeh Commission inquiry. That's the second point. The third point is this. The Jammeh Commission itself found that the AMRC was complicit in the transfer of property, in the unlawful transfer of property to Jammeh. And the Jammeh Commission recommended that the government, should look further into the activities of the AMRC. It's in the Jammeh Commission report. And they said this, that they said they would have done so had they had more time. They would have inquired into the activities of the AMRC had they had more time to do so. But since they didn't have more time, they recommended specifically that the government looks further into the activities of the AMRC. But at a starting point, they made a specific finding that successive managers at the AMRC were complicit in unlawfully transferring property to Yahya Jammeh. So this is why the AMRC option was not taken, even though it was an option that we considered, but as a result of the Jammeh Commission recommendations and their conclusions, the AMRC option.
My other question is, there were different entities dissolving these properties. At some point, it was done by the Jammeh Commission itself. I understand.
Musa, I cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Musa, I cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
No, not yet.
Can you hear me now?
No, not exactly. I think the problem may be on my part.
Can you hear me now?
I think the
Is it on my part, maybe? Guys, can you hear me, Pasamba?
Yes.
Yes, Mos, we can hear you very well.
Okay, sorry, Isba. Yeah, I mean, just to kind of remind or reiterate what, because we're already 2 hours into the show, so, and we definitely need to get into all the questions. So let's just expedite the 2 rotational questions and ask them quickly. If not, I mean, we won't be able to. It's almost, what, 3:15. So we have about 45 minutes, something like that. And also, hold on a second.
Can you
Yes.
see me or hear me now?
I can hear you and I can see you.
Okay, good. Sorry, I think this time it was my network. So basically, this is why the government did not take the AMRC option. Yes.
So, but again, going back to this perception of corruption, I mean, and that's how the average Joe will kind of look at these things. So the this close bidding, and nit ñu bari loolu dafa xaw a teyal seen xel for whatever reason. How come? Because there are other entities, for instance, that these things were auctioned in the open. And then I remember when Banker and I were opening a business, we went to an auction. And, you know, they have it all scheduled whereby they will say 500 and then you bid 550, 550, and you say 200. So in other words, everybody participates in the process. To most Gambians, call them whatever you want to call them, they think close bidding, I'm not no more demedal. I mean, somehow manipulated. So there were some that were disposed of. It wasn't done through close bidding. Looking back, especially with everybody talking and thinking that there's something shrouded in streaky or finicky, do you think maybe it is you guys could have explored another route rather than going through the close bidding route? I know that you've answered the question that maybe you've maximized the amount of revenue that could have been generated in a closed bidding compared to in an open bidding where everybody, I mean, plays along. And also just make this clarification. When the bids are sent, do they send it to directly to Alpha Capital and then with a deadline, and then Alpha Capital will bring it to the Ministry of Justice for the opening? If you could also clarify that. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, let me clarify again that there were different selling points.
Mm-hmm.
The Ministry of Justice and the Interministerial Committee were only responsible for the sale of the 44 properties that Alpha Capital sold. So the tractors, the vehicles, etc., had different selling points. Because I don't want us to confuse the different selling points, different items.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I were to make a decision again on the procedure for the sale of these assets, given the amount of success that we have, because the numbers don't lie, they're out there. We have seen how much the properties were valued and how much they were sold for.
Mm-hmm.
They were sold for 68% more than their value. Now, I think that's a great success by any standards.
Mm-hmm.
And we were only able to get that success because of the process that the receiver Alpha Capital adopted. And if I personally were to do it all over again, that's exactly how I will do it, based on the results that we have seen. Because we have seen the results, it's evident, it's obvious. A property that was valued for 10 million, 15 million is sold for 40 million. I mean, in an open bidding process, when Fatu says 10 million, Serian says 11, Pasama says 12, it stops at 12. But because you don't know what the other competitor is offering, some people don't want to take a chance unless somebody offers more. So the tendency is you hit the ceiling so that you hope that nobody matches your bid. And that's what has happened. So if I look at the results today, to be honest, if I had to do it again, I will not change one thing about it, because the result speaks for itself. Insofar as the sale of the properties are concerned, that the government was directly responsible for. Now, there were other properties that were sold. The vehicles, the tractors, those were done at the level of the commission. Then the cattle, these were done at the level of the sheriff's division. The aircrafts, these were done at the level of the finance ministry. But the properties, under the supervision of the ministerial committee, I think if we have to be fair, and the results speak for themselves. Now, Musa, you had a second question. What was the question? The second question?
I think you've answered it.
I think you did.
Right.
I think you did answer it. Yeah. So go ahead, Pap Samba.
Yes, but I think we are at different wavelengths, because what you and your government that you served see as fair valuations, most of us looking at this list, you look at, I have them printed out. I'm not like most. I have to print these things out so that I can read them. A scrap Benz, it doesn't matter what condition it is. Nobody can value that at $90,000, which is less than $2,000. Minibuses, valued at that much. So maybe what we are seeing is that the valuation itself did not match what the actual price should have been. And we all remember, yes, there were scraps by Jammeh. This man who stole our money was not buying anything cheap. He was buying one of the most expensive cars, where if you have to scrap them, you can at least fetch at minimum $5,000, $10,000. So the valuation to us does not match the realities of what the actual items would be. What say you to that, to borrow from us?
You see, that's why I underscored the different selling points. I cannot speak for the other selling points. I can only speak for the sale of the properties that the government gave to Alpha Capital and supervised. So that list of vehicles that were sold as scrap, I can't speak for those. So I want to make that clear. As far as the government was concerned, as far as I was concerned, as a member of the ministerial committee that supervised the sale of the landed properties, that's the success I am talking about. Okay. And I believe you have that list. There were 44 properties. They were sold. I don't think any of them was sold below the market value. In fact, some of them were sold almost twice their market values. And that's why I'm saying the level of success, the rate of success is 68% more than the value, the valuation prices. I mean, 68% more.
So when you're talking about valuation, you're talking about the landed properties that were sold by the ministerial committee.
I am only talking, my presence here today is about just the landed properties. I am not responsible for what happened elsewhere. So I was a member of the ministerial committee. A report was written about my involvement. I am clarifying for the ministerial committee at the time what we did, and I accept responsibility for that because I was a member of that. We did a fantastic job, I have to say. And again, I refer to the results of the sale of those 44 properties. The list is out now, and I am happy that the list is out now.
All right, so the question that I have, coming to the ministerial committee, in answering the first question, the loaded question that Musa asked you, you had insisted on the independence of the process itself. That even instead of doing what was traditional by going to the civil service and getting a secretary, you got somebody outside. Why wasn't that independence maintained in regards to creating a ministerial committee that now involve people who were part of the government? Why wasn't a committee and a separately independent entity created that would look into the matter, do with the sales, so that all this perception that we have, especially nobody trusts government, I don't trust any government anyway, that we would have had now an independent entity look at this matter, sell it, and they can come to us with a report where we will not be looking at a report and seeing all these names and wondering who they are, because apparently nobody knows any of these people on. Why wasn't the independence mindset that you had in creating the commission, why wasn't that translated into also the disposition of all the assets, including the landed properties?
I can only speak for the landed properties. Again, I keep saying, in the case of the landed properties, we did employ an independent person. Alpha Capital is an independent company. But
the ministerial committee, that's what I'm talking about here.
Yes, but the government had to have a supervisory role over that. We're talking about revenue that is generated for the government. So the government wanted to ensure that there was supervision of the process, to ensure that the that Alpha Capital had a reporting authority. The Alpha Capital had to report to someone. And that is why the ministerial committee was set up, so that he could report to that committee. And if he had questions, if he had queries, if he had inquiries, he could go and seek guidance from the ministerial committee. And he submitted his periodic reports to the ministerial committee. So you had to have a government representative body that was responsible for supervising this process, even though they did not interfere in the actual process itself. Nobody interfered, because all the bids were sent directly to Alpha Capital, which Alpha Capital would take to the Ministry of Justice, to the Office of the Solicitor General, and open these bids. Even the ministerial committee members were not present when these bids were being opened.
All right, Antifatu.
So, Kini, just
so we have a guest who wants to ask few questions, and his name is Sajo Barrow, and I believe he's on. Sajo, are you there?
I'm here. Thank you, brother Saria. Afternoon, everyone.
Afternoon, Sajo.
And then congratulations, on your candidacy. We are all vying for you. And then I think my question is just few, and then I think to simplify it for the audience. I believe the reason you came here, as he explained, was to address the Republic publication regarding your tenure at the AG office, and then I read the article, and then I also read the rejoinder you sent, and then as I indicated, from my point of view, I think some things make sense to me. Those are coming from the legal background regarding the court issues, but I think for the general public, for the Gambian, the biggest indictment, the way I read the report, Republic is not accusing that you participated in the purchase of any of the the properties, but rather my reading of it and then how I appreciate their reporting is there is actual conflict of interest, and then some other is there are what appears to be a conflict of interest, which either you intentionally turn a blind eye, or maybe, for lack of better word, malfeasance, or you just don't want to know. And then I think based on the answers you provided today, personally, I think some of those raised the questions. So for instance, I think the biggest issue for you was, and then I believe Ms. Joe asked this, your wife was mentioned, your now wife, at the time it wasn't your wife, whether you were aware when the properties that were strictly under the AG's office that were disposed of, whether she was a party to that. And then to your credit, your answer is no, she was coming to your office at the time, and then she's there to sell a family property for you. But what I want to know, which would be a yes or no, at least for the general public, like if you dumb it down for us, does your wife during, at the time, your wife now, but let me not use it, does Binta at the time, Miss Binta at the time, was she either an employee of Alpha Capital, working with Alpha Capital, a sales agent of Alpha Capital, when at least the ministerial committee awarded Alpha Capital to stand as a receivership at the time? I think that's the most important question.
Yeah. Thank you, Sajo, and thank you for your well wishes for my candidature. You know, the short answer is no, absolutely no. She had absolutely no official relationship with Mr. Alpha Barry, either as a sales agent or an employee or whatsoever. When I have always known Binta as an independent operator. As far back as 2010, that's when I hired her to manage my property that I had rented to the resident representative of the IMF in the Gambia. Then I was working abroad. I was introduced to her as an estate agent. So she's the one who actually found me the tenant, the IMF resident rep, and she's the one who managed that property for a fee, and she's gone on to do that job for other members of my family. So I have always known her as an independent estate agent. I have never known her to work with Alpha Capital or Mr. Alpha Barry in any official shape or form. So that's the answer in short.
Okay, I think that would clarify, because I think, and then the coach points regarding the valuation of the property. This is where, for me, especially for someone like yourself, who Gambians during the 2017, we look up to you. I know you indicated that you're only responsible for what's within the properties that were disposed of under the Ministry of Justice. That's for property, but all the assets, when you initially indicated at the beginning of the program that you had to file for an application to freeze some of those assets because the concern for the government is spoliation. So at least you would agree that the government interest is to preserve all properties that belong to the state. I know technically they are Jammeh's, probably he had title. So whether it's directly under the Ministry of Justice or not, but as the chief law enforcement officer for the entire Gambia, you would at least agree that you have an obligation, or if not a legal duty, to protect every asset that you think it's within the government purview, right?
I would give you a qualified response because I don't want to take responsibility for the actions of other independent bodies. So if you take, for instance, the Jammeh Commission, which operated as an independent commission of inquiry, now I cannot claim to have responsibility over
I think you answered that before. I don't want to take the guest time. So I see, I understand why you don't want to take that, but I think that would be for the part. But then let me ask this, because the only thing that keeps picking my mind, the properties, you've indicated that the state saw it fit to freeze those assets to avoid spoliation. And then you were given an injunction that would expire 6 months if you don't do anything by your own representation under the Anti-Money Laundering Act. But which brings the question, before that 6 months expire, the government now sees fit to unfreeze those assets and then sell them. And then the ones you wanted to unfreeze, if I understand from your conversation, were the landed property in TDA area, because at the time, the claim was the government wanted to build hotels in terms of the OIC. So I guess the question is, those TDA, properties that presumptively belong to Gambians, but Jammeh took it one way or the other and then titled it to himself. Did the state divest title from Jammeh before, they freeze it, or as part of the freezing application?
No, that's the thing. The state did not divest title when it first applied to the court for the unfreezing of the TDA lands. It was when the first application was denied that the state adopted the strategy that you're now talking about by canceling the leases and divesting Jammeh of title of those properties, and then submitted a fresh application on the basis of this new fact, which is why Justice Jaite granted the application for the state. So it was.
Then I think I would have to agree with Mustafa on this one. So this is, now I see what happened. So, yeah. I mean, it might be kosher, borderline legal, to state has the right to cancel the lease. But in Mustafa's dealing, when he said the court was manipulated, he may not be a lawyer, but there is some truth to it. We can agree to disagree. Because if the state realized that, okay, Justice Saho denied the application, thinking that there is no evidence, probably he is interested in due process, regardless of how bad Jammeh is. He is still protected by the Constitution. The state canceled the application, like his title. When the new application was submitted, which is entirely within your providence to do so, did Justice Jaite, or maybe the court rules, this would be yes or no, require at least informing him that a prior application was denied, this was the reasoning or the deficiencies listed, and then we have cured those deficiencies in this new application? Or, so to Justice Jaite, at minimum, titles were cancelled by the land minister, which the laws allow us to do, and then now we wanted to unfreeze these, but the unfreezing, we are giving notice to Jammeh, whether he's here or through proxy, that way he could come in and then protect his interest. Because if that is done, at least in your claim or your contention that Mustafa mischaracterized some things, would at least have some substance. But if that wasn't done, and then if you are on the other side, you put yourself in Mustafa's shoe, at least that reporting would have been accurate. It could not have been said that that was malicious. From my point of view, if you could help us understand that part.
Yeah. And that's why I keep saying that Mustafa just needed more time to conduct additional research based on the responses I provided to him before he published his report. Because these, as I'm sure you appreciate, Mr. Bao, are complex legal questions. And to give a short answer for the audience, The second option that you have described is the option that the state exercise. So we went, and that's why it was the director, the Department of Lands, who swore to the affidavit affirming that the leases of Jammeh were cancelled. Now, as to whether Jammeh was given notice following the cancellation or not, I can't recall that part of the facts. I have to probably find out from Lance or whoever. But these are all things that occurred many years ago. And right now, I can't recall whether there was notice. I know that as a matter of procedure, we have issued notices to Jammeh through substituted service by advertising things in the newspapers, etc. That has happened in the past. But we divested Jammeh of title of those TDA lands, and it was on the basis of that that we went to the court to seek an application to unfreeze the land. That's exactly what we did, which is your second.
I would yield to the panelists because since you don't want to address the other one, I think that's where the problem is. The other asset that we are disposed of, in my opinion, but you don't want to address that, and then the question would be futile. You just want to address what happened at the Ministry of Justice. But I think that's where Coach point is, and then that's where I see more issue with. But I'm not going to engage in that. But thank you for your
time. No, I'm happy to address your, maybe I missed it, Sergio. Go ahead. What was the question that I didn't address? I'm happy to do
No,
that.
I mean, like, I know you said you don't want to take responsibilities for, because this is where Fatu's question comes to, and then Coach. And then I think that's where the bigger issue is. Regarding the land, and and then your contention is the valuation for those lands, and then what they were sold for was almost 60% above, fair market value. Now that's for the public to decide whether that, valuation is accurate or not. That's one thing. And then to Coach's point regarding why a cabinet, panel was set to dispose of those land, and then the bidding, I have issues with that, whether it's closed bidding or not, but that's for the public to decide. I don't think we can fault you for that. Cabinet made a decision, and then you decided to make it a closed bid. The question that lingers in my mind is, even though this was advertised, it could be, the website is created, I don't know whether Gambian have it, but I don't think that's the best way to reach out to Gambian. We could have reached out to Gambians through Radio Gambia, the local news, as TRRC was, handled. But I think the issue for me is, as someone who sits, like the chief law enforcement officer for the entire country, and then knowing how important it is to protect some of those assets, even when the commission dissolves or they are selling those properties, I would think at least, there will be some kind of update to your office or to the government regarding the manner in which those assets were being sold, how much they are being sold for, and then to at least see if you think the state is being undercut, or somehow a fast one is being pulled on the state, at least you would have within your power to interject or even file an application to stop those things, to make sure the state doesn't become a victim for the second time. But I understand you don't want to address that because if I understand your answer is they delegate that authority to a commission and then one to the Sheriff Department. I'm not going to second guess them, even if I think that even if you don't agree with what they were doing, you were not going to do anything, or you don't want to speak about that. So I think that's where most of the problem is, from my point of view, how those assets were sold. As Coach indicated, like some of the vehicles going for 2,000, which is not sold by your office, but at least, I think my thinking is from the general public that you have the power to at least do something, but you have reported it to the National Assembly. The question becomes whether you so I think that's where the contention is. But I would allow you if you want to answer that. But if not, I would yield to the panelists. But thank you so much. And then good luck.
Thank you, Sergeant. Let me just say this. Looking back, because we also have to be honest. I mean, every day in our personal lives, we make decisions. Then the next day we said, perhaps we could have done this way or that way. And I am not going to sit here and pretend that we had a perfect process in everything that we did from beginning to the end. No, that was not the case. There were things in hindsight we could have done differently. There are things that we could have improved on. But again, I keep saying, the benefit of hindsight 6 years after is sitting in our comfort zones and looking back and saying, okay, maybe this could have been done this way or that could have been done that way. But a lot of the decisions were made based on the realities that we were faced with at that time. And some of those decisions have to be understood in the context of those realities. For instance, if I say we wanted a totally independent commission without the government interfering, because once the government starts to interfere, then everybody questions the integrity of the commission's proceedings, and we didn't want that. So we had a complete hands-off approach to all the commissions, not just the Jammeh Commission, but the Constitutional Review Commission, the Truth Commission, and members of these commissions can confirm this to you. The government made sure that we kept the commissions at arm's length, and that's what we did with the Jammeh Commission. Obviously, occasionally I would submit reports to the National Assembly, and I think that's where I first reported the vehicles that were sold and how much were gained, etc. But in terms of taking a more proactive intervention in the conduct of the Jammeh Commission's business, no, I wouldn't advise that. I think we wanted to maintain the autonomy and total independence of the Jammeh Commission. If we were to do a similar thing again today, would we have done certain things differently? Absolutely. We have learned lessons, and that's the whole point. The whole point of these exercises is to learn lessons so that when you are doing them again, you can improve on your delivery processes. So certain things could have been done differently. Absolutely, I agree with that. But I don't want to go into the details of what the other institutions did and whether they did it rightly or wrongly.
All right, Mr. Tambadou, that's thank you very much. It's Mother's Day today, and I had to take Karamo to a birthday party as well. So Faramos, Coach Jau,
man. You want to play the ads before we go to that, so that at least those people for the final few minutes that we have before that, please.
Yes.
Sorry, I didn't hear you. Is this the end for me? Is that what you're saying?
No. You're not off the hook yet.
I'm not off the hook yet. Okay.
Aisha Restaurant. We are located at 1460 Boston Road in the Bronx. We are open 7 days a week from 1 to 12 a.m. We serve Senegambian food and American soul food on Wednesdays and Senegambian food all 7 days. We do dine-in, we do takeout. We serve chebijin, chebiapa. We do mafe, we do plasa, we do ebe every other day. We have yassa ganat with rice, super kanja with white rice and fufu. We serve a lot of delicious foods. For dinner, we do dibi, chicken dibi, penta, whole chicken. We have shawarma, lots of good food. Also, offer catering service for weddings, baby showers, birthday parties, whatever you need, we got it here at Kid Aisha. You can call us at 718-450-8606, and we're also on Uber Eats. And if you've ever been to Kid Aisha, make sure you leave a review. Thank you guys for supporting, and we hope to see some new faces.
Hey, I'm calling my cousins in New York to head on to.
All right. So I think.
According to the World Health Organization, WHO, as estimated 7 million people die from air pollution globally each year. This includes both outdoor and indoor air pollution. Most of these deaths, 4.2 million, are caused by outdoor air pollution, such as from vehicle emissions, industrial activities, and wildfires. Indoor air pollution, such as from burning wood or cooking fuel, is responsible for an additional 2.8 million deaths. Air pollution is considered one of the leading environmental risk factors for premature death. It is associated with a wide range of health problems, including respiratory diseases, heart disease, stroke, and cancer. Each breath you take, there is something in it. The question is, what damage is that going to do to your health? One of the biggest misconceptions about air pollution is that it comes from one source, or it has the same health impact that is not so. Air pollution comes from many sources, and many sources change over time. For example, if you are standing by the road, ride particles coming from tire wears, brick wears, and there are particles traveling in the air that travel in far distances. An estimated 1,000 people die each year in Washington state due to outdoor air pollution. Air pollution is a serious problem in Washington state. In a new report from Washington Department of Ecology, researchers investigated health data for 16 overburdened areas of Washington and found people in these communities face a higher death rate from air pollution than the state average. The report also shows higher rates of chronic respiratory and cardiovascular conditions across the 16 areas, where ecology has identified vulnerable populations that face high levels of air pollution in addition to social, economic, and environmental inequities. People think air pollution affects the lungs, but perhaps what they did not realize, it affects every part of the body. The advertisement is funded by Ecology with funding from Washington's Climate Commitment Act. The CCA supports Washington's climate action efforts by putting cap and invest dollars to work reducing climate pollution, reducing climate pollution, creating jobs, and improving public health in collaboration with New World International.
All right.
Welcome to the Gambia, a country with a rich tradition in tourism and a beacon for investors. Experience a nation committed to progress, a home where nature's beauty is matched by the warmth of its people. A nation that is fast-growing and developing, thriving for togetherness. At the heart of this development is the Global Properties, the Gambia's premier real estate developer. Introducing you to our latest property being developed, the Lakeview, an epitome of luxury and comfort. Whether you are looking for a residence or investment property, Lakeview is the ultimate option. The Gambia is not just a place to live, it's a place to thrive. Welcome home.
Go ahead, Brother Maron.
All right. I think it's been a long interview, Ba. And today is Mother's Day. And I need to take my uncle to a birthday party before he gets mad at me. I think we just need to go around one question and we get your closing remarks. And, so my question to you is, what was the bidding process and the selection that leads to Alpha Capital? And I think this Alpha Capital has been a bit of contentious. And where did you declare, in terms of conflict of interest, that you are a friend and you will rescue yourself from any decision in terms of the selection of Alpha Capital?
The starting point is this: the presumption, which is also contained, unfortunately, in Mustafa's report, that Alpha Capital was my friend. I am not even in the same generation with Mr. Alpha Barry, let alone call him my friend. He is an acquaintance nowadays, and we developed a relationship in the course of him doing work for the ministerial committee. And of course, like many people, I developed a relationship with when I was in office. But I had not known Mr. Alpha Barry in person. I certainly heard a lot about him. He was one of the foremost or leading chartered accountants in the country, based on what people said at the time. He was working as a senior partner at Deloitte and Touche, etc. So he has had his reputation established in the same way that Augustus Pom had their reputation established. Just look at our choice here. We have hired two of the leading chartered accountants in the country. We didn't go to the streets and look for any riffraff. Accountant and gave them this. Maybe that would have raised suspicion, but we went to two of the most professional, the most highly reputable chartered accountants in the country, who are international consultants. Now, I didn't know Mr. Barry up till 2018, when he came to my office together with Mustafa Njai of TAF Global and others to discuss about FTI's plans and to get an idea of when the TDA lands will be available, etc., etc. Now, I provided this information to Mustafa. And again, like I said, he needed more time to do his investigation, because he could have reached out to Mr. Mustafa Njai of TAF Global and say, and and ask his questions to confirm what I told him. But he didn't do that as well. And so I didn't know Mr. Alpha Barry. At that time, I've never had any kind of relationship with him. And in the same way that Augustus Plum was recommended to us from within the government, it was the same way that Alpha Capital was recommended to us from within the government. It was the same way that others were recommended to us in all the other activities that we were conducting, except for those who I knew personally and whose integrity I could vouch for. Again, I need to contextualize this. And I have to confess here, when the change occurred back in 2017, 2018, we inherited a government machinery that was still heavily infested with Jammeh sympathizers or Jammeh enablers, as people call them, people who were loyal to Jammeh and his political party. That was the state of the civil service. And so there was a lot of circumspection on my part. I will confess this, and I have confessed it to my Solicitor General on occasions. I have said, I want to approach with caution everyone who has held a very senior position in the country during Jammeh, because I am dealing with very sensitive processes here, and I want to be able to trust the people that that we are giving these responsibilities to. And so we were very selective in the kind of people that we were identifying and giving work to. And this was the same when we looked at appointments for the Jammeh Commission, the TIRC, the CRC, all of those. And it was the same when we looked for people to do the work that Augustus Plum did or Alpha Capital. It was on the basis of the recommendation of their integrity, their professionalism, their independence, and their reputation that formed the basis of us engaging with them. So they had similar trajectory. They were recommended to us. We approved their appointment. In the case of Alpha Capital, it was the ministerial committee that approved. In the case of Augustus Plum, it was the ministry that single-handedly went to court and asked for the court to appoint him.
Thank you. Fatu, go ahead.
Okay, Ba, thank you so much for still being here with us. I'm going to go back to where we left it. To my understanding, I think you still don't get where we are coming from. The citizens, lay people, those who don't understand anything. You were the top legal guy for the country. Why do you think everybody is saying that they sold a cow for 10,000 and they are upset with you? We know you did not sell any cow to yourself or to your family member. We know you did not. But the whole moral point of this is you are calling this a success. So I think we are completely missing each other. You are calling this sale process a success, and it almost cost you a revolution for your government. But still, you are calling this a success. We are not even particular about the money, who bought what, but the moral responsibility of you as the top legal guy. If you are selling some shares of something else, those are private investors, and that's their business, that's their money. This is not anything private. This is Dictator Jammeh's properties that he accumulated illegally. And it's not, this is a lot. This took a lot. You were the top legal guy for this process. So you were busy trying to protect private citizens who had vested interest in this very secretly, to a point that it almost cost you your government. So we are disappointed. You, as the moral top legal person overseeing all this, you cannot just say, oh, I didn't sell the cattle, so the cattle were not sold. I was responsible for the landed. No, you were the justice minister. Your eyes should have been everywhere when Jammeh left, legally, on everything, because you are the one they chose, and we respected and supported you on that. So why do you still call this a success when the whole country is upset about how it went? You were just there in secret, protecting private. These are not private investors. Well, they bought it, but this is dictators' property. This is the overall Gambian property. That's why we are so upset. We're not concerned about other private investments or entities. We are upset with you because this is Gambian property that we are trying to extricate from Jammeh. And instead, things that you were running from, you did that easily. You just distributed it in secret, protecting buyers to a point that the whole country is upset. Number two, why did Kurang was pushed out? Because we are hearing all kind of stories. I don't even know him that well, and I don't know his position there. But what would you say to why he left?
Fatu, I think I lost you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you very, very well. I'm not sure if you can hear. You heard me.
Sorry, Fatu. I think I lost you momentarily.
I can hear you. I don't know if you can hear me.
But did you hear her question, or you want her to repeat her question?
Ba is not hearing us. It doesn't.
Yes.
This is not good for me. I can't hear you anymore.
You text him to.
Maybe it's my connection. I don't know.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Ba log out and log in.
Log it back in. Yeah.
I think I can. Okay.
Can you hear us now, Ba? Oh.
Part about the anger and the frustration and the fact that everybody was looking up to me to show more leadership in all of this. You know, Fatu, I totally. Can you hear me?
Very well.
Yes, good. I totally accept and understand the public's frustration. I am not disputing that. I understand why people are frustrated. I understand why people are angry. I understand why people are hungry for information. But I need to make one or two clarifications. When I said this was a success, I was talking about the sale of the landed properties. I keep underscoring that. No, wait, Father, I'm coming. Let me just, I'll answer your question. I am talking about the process that the Ministry of Justice and the government had direct supervision over, and which was the process of the sale of the landed properties. And as far as I can see, that was a success. Now, obviously, there are challenges, as you are identifying, in other areas. And that's why I admitted that not everything that was done was perfect. These were processes that are subject to challenges, to pitfalls, to hurdles. Things might have been done, although well-intentioned, but perhaps didn't come out the best way. In terms of the people who purchase, I will repeat myself. Perhaps you didn't get it the first time. I accept that in hindsight, given the public outcry, I think in the public interest, the list of those who purchased these properties should have been released a long time ago. But I am saying at the time that we made the decision not to publish the list, it was to strike a balance between the right of privacy of individuals on one hand and the right of the general public to know what the government was doing on the other hand. At that point in time, that's the balance we tried to strike. However, even in striking that balance, we still gave that information to the representatives of the people, your representatives in the National Assembly. We gave this list to them. Now, the members of the National Assembly had the option of sharing that information with their constituents. However, I still accept that once the clamor started for this list of purchasers to be published, it became an issue of general public importance and public interest for the list to be published. And I accept that it should have been published earlier. It wasn't published earlier. At the time, these were the considerations, balancing public interest with private individual interest. we drew the line in favor of protecting private individual interests to the extent that we only provided the information to members of the National Assembly. So don't forget that part. It was shared with members of the National Assembly, who are the representatives of the people. In hindsight, maybe we should have published the list at that time and avoid all of this speculation. I agree. If only we could have seen what was happening today. But me coming here does a few things. It shows that I am categorically denying the allegations of conflict of interest against me in the Republic. I think Mustafa could have done a better job with the information that I provided to him. And I am here being accountable for my part. You asking me the questions, your audience asking me the questions, because I have nothing to hide. And I am admitting to you that yes, things could have been done differently. I am not denying that. We didn't have a 100% perfect process. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I think she has another question about Kurang. You didn't answer that, so go ahead and answer that. That way, Coach can have his question. So,
you want me to talk about Kurang?
Yeah, she asked a question. That was our second question.
Yes, Kurang. You know, I keep saying this. I had a lot of respect for Alagie Kurang, which is why when he also was recommended to me, because Alagie Kurang was recommended to me, I reached out to him and offered him the post of secretary because we wanted a totally independent commission. And to be honest, he also accepted the offer and started working well. The problem started when Alagie, in my view, didn't handle a subject that could have been better handled. He had concerns about the lead counsel, Ms. Bensouda, and Alagie's own suspicions about Ms. Bensouda's intentions regarding the tractors. Now, Alagie never raised this with Ms. Bensouda herself first. He never raised this with the chairman of the commission, Suahata Jammeh. Neither did he raise it with the other members of the commission by Marcen or Abiose George. Nor did he raise it with me, nor with the Solicitor General. So you had all these people that Alagie could have approached and raised his suspicions with. He didn't. He wrote straight to the office of the president to complain about lead counsel. And quite rightly, the office of the president sent that complaint back to me as the ministry responsible, the line ministry responsible for the Jammeh Commission. So the office of the president sent that letter to me. When I saw Alagie's complaint, I, of course, consulted Ms. Bensouda in my office and asked whether the allegations were true. She denied it. I asked whether Alagie had ever raised this with her. He denied, and she said no. And I said, in view of these allegations, would you be able to continue working with Alagie? And she says, no way. With these kind of allegations, really, I don't trust him anymore. I said, fine. Then I reached out to the commissioners, Suahata Jammeh, by Marcen and Abiose George. All three came to my office. I had a meeting. I asked whether Alagie ever raised these issues with them. They said no. And then I asked whether, in view of the allegations and the situation, whether they can continue to work with Alagie. They said no, they can't, not under those circumstances. Now, I have the lead counsel, I have all three commissioners who have said to me that they can't work with Alagie anymore because there has been a breakdown of trust. They no longer have confidence in him. As a result, this was in, I think, this was a year after the Jammeh Commission had started, and more than a year actually. They had gone far with all the proceedings, all the investigations. You know, the commission was proceeding quite well. So then we looked at Alagie's complaint, and I recall my conversation with Alagie. I asked Alagie, do you have evidence of these allegations? Hard evidence? And he said no, he doesn't have hard evidence, but he knows what he's saying because he's at the commission, he sees it. Now, as a lawyer, I can only act on the basis of evidence. I cannot just take Alagie's allegations as the truth without further evidence. Alagie could have corroborated if anybody else had come with Alagie and said what Alagie is saying it's true, this is what's happening, that would have taken the matter to a different level. But without corroboration, without additional evidence, I cannot just, we are making allegations, serious allegations against people's reputation. We should not take that lightly. At least I didn't take that lightly. And so that's why I am disheartened when I see people take the allegations in the Republic about me and then run with it and drag my name in the mud. It's disheartening because this is something that I fought against when I was Justice Minister in the Gambia. I wanted us to change our mindset. Anyway, I called Alagie and said, in view of this situation, the commissioners have said they can't work with you anymore. Lead counsel says she can't work with you anymore. I am in a fix here because I am the one who sought you out from your private business and brought you into this commission. And I don't want the government to sack you and stain your record, because up to that point, I am not aware of any stain that you have on your record. Because why actually we hired him? Because just so you know, every hiring that I did at that time, I subjected them to scrutiny. I would write to the Inspector General of Police, or I would call and say, can you do a background check on X or Y or Z? All of the appointments that we did at the time, people didn't know this, but I did my due diligence on all of them. And IGP Lang, former IGP Lang Kinte would tell you this. Unfortunately, IGP Mahmoud Job has passed. But anyway, I told Alagie, I don't want to stain your record by the government removing you from your position and staining your professional record. In view of the fact that the commissioners and council no longer have the confidence to work with you, I would prefer that you tender your resignation to the government so that it becomes your resignation and you can keep your dignity and your professional record clean. Alagie refused. He told me he's not going to resign. Now, I am caught in this situation. Am I going to dismantle the entire Jammeh Commission, get rid of the commissioners, get rid of council, start all over again on the basis of an unsubstantiated allegation by the secretary? Or am I going to remove the secretary and find another secretary who would see the Jammeh Commission proceedings to the end? This was the choice I had at the time. And based on the situation, I chose the option that I thought was least disruptive to the commission, which was to ask the president, His Excellency Adama Barrow, to remove Alagie from his post. And that is why Alagie was removed, because the commissioners and council no longer had trust and confidence in working with him. And even when Alagie was removed, you will recall the press conference that I had, I avoided saying anything bad about Alagie. And even when the Jammeh Commission was submitting its report, I thanked him for his service to the commission. And when I met the press over Alagie's sacking, I said his position was no longer tenable, and I didn't go into details. Again, to try to make the best out of a very difficult situation at the time. So this is, in short, what happened in the case of Alagie.
Thank you. Coach, go ahead.
Yes, I'm going to on that Alagie thing. Could there be another option where instead of asking him, do you have evidence, and he said no, to just go and ask the commissioners, could you have also asked him to bring you collaborative evidence that you can use to ensure that the integrity of the commission will be intact? Knowing that if you ask me and I tell you, well, I see it, I'm working there, and you said, well, you don't have the evidence, and ask the others, now pretty much whatever it is that he could have said could have continued to undermine the integrity of the commission. Whereas if you were to ask you, well, if you have collaborative evidence, bring it to me. And then if you were to have a meeting with the commissioners, you can present them with such evidence and say, you know what, here. Now, if I give you, okay, I'm giving you 3 weeks to bring me substantial evidence about this. If you don't bring it, then you don't have it. But if it is brought, then when those commissioners come to you, the lead counsel come to you, you can present them with evidence. You know what, here is an evidence that is brought to me saying A, B, C, and D. What is your response to that? And I believe that would have at least enhanced the integrity of the process. What say you to that, to borrow from Musa?
Yes, I mean, the import of my question to Alagie, if he had evidence, is exactly that. Do you have evidence that you can provide to substantiate these allegations? That's the import of my question when I said to Alagie, do you have evidence to support this? So I was basically saying to Alagie, can you bring evidence to support this? That's essentially what the question was. So perhaps it's the way that I have recounted this here today. But the import of my question to Alagie was, do you have evidence that you can provide to support this? And let me just perhaps add another detail here. One of Alagie's allegations was that lead counsel Ami Bensouda colluded with her brother, who was the Secretary General at the time, Habib Jammeh, to delay the sale of the tractors so that Ms. Bensouda can subsequently benefit from it. Well, I can attest to the fact, and my other colleagues who were in cabinet, and there are quite a number of them out there, they can also attest to the fact that it was on the request of cabinet that the Office of Secretary General wrote to the Commission to request them to delay the sale of the tractors while the government considers what to do with those tractors. So it was the late Minister of Agriculture, Lamin Diba, who actually requested that maybe perhaps we shouldn't sell these tractors, maybe perhaps we should hold on to selling them because the rains were imminent, and that the government should decide whether the tractors should be given back to the communities, etc. And it was on the basis of that cabinet decision that the Office of the Secretary General, I don't want to personalize things, it was not Ami Bensouda's brother who wrote in his personal name. People tend to personalize these things, and that's why I have found myself caught up in this situation where people are saying Ba Tambadou, Ba Tambadou. It's not a personal decision. These are government actions that are carried out by people in the name of the government. So the Secretary General wrote to the Commission and requested for the Commission to defer the sale of the tractors while the government reverts with a decision. But you know, Gambia government, sometimes there are inordinate delays. So the Secretary General wrote, the Commission could have refused, but I guess they had consideration for the government. You can't ignore the Office of the President's request like that. But they held on and waited for the government to come back to them. There was substantial delay. There was a lot of delay between the time that the government requested for the postponement of the sale, and then I guess the Commission waited and waited and waited. The rains were coming, the tractors were being cannibalized, the spare parts were missing, they were degrading, and so they decided to sell these tractors and not wait for the government anymore. So I know for a fact that one of Alagie's allegations that Ms. Bensouda colluded with her brother, the Secretary General at the time, to delay the sale of the tractors was not accurate. It was on the instructions of cabinet that the Secretary General wrote, or the Office of the Secretary General wrote to the Commission.
All right, so the other question, this is a question that somebody sent me. I have so many questions sent to me, but some of them you've already answered about why the thing was not made public. But this about making it public too, this one of the legal minds too. And the question is, were the bidders or buyers informed that their details would be released to the public if need be?
Sorry, say that again.
Were the buyers, those who were bidding, were they informed that their details, that they bought the properties, could be released to the public if the need arises?
I do not recall, because the ministerial committee was not involved in the bids. But as far as I know, there was nothing like that discussed between the winners. Because really, I to be honest, throughout the time that I was there, I have never met any bidder in person at the ministry. Never. And so I don't know what would have been said to the bidders after they won, but I know that there could have been the expectation that their identities would be revealed. And again, just to clarify, the whole idea of the closed bidding was not to hide the identity of the bidders. No, that was not the purpose. The purpose was to maximize the revenue for the government. And I think we have all seen the results insofar as the properties are concerned. I keep limiting myself to the sale of the properties. Again, because that is what I have responsibility over as a member of the ministerial committee. So the closed bidding process was not meant to hide the identity of the bidders, but it was meant to maximize the revenue that the government was making. Whether or not the bidders were told that their identities could be revealed, I cannot recall that.
Okay.
So Ba,
my battery is about to finish. Let me see.
I guess I have the last question. Okay. And then we're out of here for Mother's Day. It looks like most people are very concerned as far as the announcement for the bidding. In other words, make it open so that people will have opportunity to bid. There is a question that says the $1 million question was the announce for the public to submit bidding, because they're thinking the announcement just went to certain people. And then there was another comment. There was no transparency during the selling of the properties. And it because they're saying this should have been announced to all the media outlets. In other words, people are saying, and of course, I mean, it's one of the things that the Republic did indicate, that the process of recovering these alleged officials selling assets to friends and family and themselves. In other words, people are insinuating ñun ñep xamuñ ko won. Su fekkone ñun ñep xam nañ ko dina gëna leer and people will participate in this bidding process. But it looks like only a selected few. What do you say to that? That somehow this thing was not like open for everyone to know we're selling these lands, and it's, I mean, and I think that you did address there was a website, but what do you say to that? What can you add to reassure people that the information is actually out there?
Billahi, wallahi, tallahi, the sales were advertised in the local newspapers. Come on, how many of us in Gambia pick up local newspapers these days? Now, that the sales were advertised in local newspapers. The records are there. They're at the ministry. I mean, I won't tell you this without the evidence. They're there. And the properties were also advertised on the website. For those in the diaspora, those like you, like the Syrians who have millions of dollars stashed away in their bank accounts, could also purchase these properties. Now, okay, granted, maybe the period of the advertisement could have been extended. Maybe the radio could have been, I'm not even sure whether the radio was used. I don't want to say, but perhaps more effort could have been made to advertise these properties. But I believe sincerely, because if you look at those who purchased these properties, how did these people know? And to say that it was bought by family, friends, etc. Look at the list. Do you see my family member there? Do you see my friend there on that list? No. In fact, if you look at Mustafa's report, the second half, or maybe, you know, the first half is all about me, ba, ba, ba. The second half, where he talks about the other auctions, etc., he makes more specific allegations. Buyers, sellers being the buyers, things being sold at a giveaway price. Those are, I'm not saying they are true, they are just allegations, but they are more specific allegations. So in hindsight, I concede maybe more effort should have been done to reach a wider audience. But if you look at the list of purchasers, if you look at the list, then you wonder, how did these people know about this sale? Because these are people from all backgrounds, from all geographic parts of the Gambia, from all ethnic groups. You can tell by their surnames, etc., to an extent. So the fact that those people knew about it is evidence that this was advertised. The fact that more people could have known about it, that is true. I accept that maybe the time for the advertisements, maybe other means of advertisements could have been used, but the fact remains that the advertisements were not restricted, they were not limited, they were in the newspapers, they were on the website.
Thank you very much, Ba.
All right.
For the people, by the people. Brother Marong.
Yes, sir. I yield the floor to you, Mr. Tambadou, for your closing remarks. It's been a
a long journey, and it's quite a while, about 4 hours and counting. So, but go ahead and do your closing remarks.
Thank you, Syrian, and thank you to all of you, Fatu, Coach, Mose. I decided to come here so that I can speak with the Gambian people, as I have done with Peter Gomez on Coffee Time and with Panderi in the local vernacular on Star TV. I have not been accused by the Republic of embezzlement or conversion or anything like that. I have not been accused of taking money from the Gambian people or from the government. The Republic's report raises questions of conflict of interest. And I wanted every Gambian to be reassured that there was no conflict of interest at all, that I have always acted in good conscience and conviction, that I have always tried to base my decisions on professionalism, with integrity, knowing full well that my reputation was always on the line for every decision that I make. I have had 26 years of career in the law, and I have never been accused of a single act of misconduct. A single act of misconduct, let alone to be accused of conflict of interest, to provide financial gain to those close to me. I was hurt. I was very hurt. And the fact that people are dragging my name through the mud and my reputation made it even more painful. But I know in my conscience that I did nothing wrong. And I want the Gambian people to look back at my commitment, at my dedication, at my devotion, at my leadership during a very difficult period in our country's history. I have been the most accountable minister at the time. I have been the most accessible minister at the time. I had nothing to hide. And I invited members of the public and the press to come to the ministry, to my press conferences, where I would answer all their questions honestly and candidly. I have never misled the Gambian people, not even once throughout the 3.5 years that I was Attorney General and Minister. I have never shied away from making difficult decisions and confronting them. And I have never run away from coming out to accept my decisions, even the most difficult ones, like releasing the jugglers. I will always tell you why I make my decisions. You may agree or disagree. That is your right. But I will never shy away from telling you why I made a particular decision. And in this case, Alpha Capital was not my friend at the time that he was made to sell the properties on behalf of the government. Binta was never a sales agent of Alpha Capital, because there was no role for a sales agent in a closed bidding process. We never manipulated a court decision to unfreeze the TDA lands, and we acted in good faith at all times. And if only Mustafa had given himself a little bit more time, he would have reached a different conclusion from the one that he reached about me. And that is what I wanted to say today to the Gambian people. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Tambadou, for having the courage to come in. As everyone knows, this platform, we ask questions, give opportunity to answer, and the viewers, decide. And with that, Coach Pa Tambadou and Fatu Jau, it's been a long hours now. Do you guys have, what do you see about the interview? It's, conclusion remarks, but we had the minister, and, people can take what it is from what he shared with us today.
Well, I had announced earlier that this is the 9th year of this show. Us hosting it 10 years since it started. And we only have one objective. We bring people here, we ask them questions, and it is up to the viewers to draw their own conclusions. We are not here to control how anybody is going to think. That is something we cannot even do. We have a very, I think, sophisticated listenership or viewership who would listen to an idea and come up with their own conclusion. At the end of the day, this is the only way that we can enhance our democracy by bringing people to these programs and have them share their opinions as to what. So it is up to us to take anything from it. But thank you very much for joining us today. I know it's late wherever you may be now. We appreciate it. And the very essence of it is just this. Let's continue having these discussions and challenging each other. Because at the end of the day, that's the only way that we can get the Gambia that we so deserve. And you know that public office comes with the heat. So that's the thing. So this is not the first and it's not going to be the last. Nyancho.
Sorry.
Yes, sir. We're good.
We're good.
All right, man. All right. I mean, thank you all. It's been a good.
Sorry,
yes, sir.
Just for a brief moment.
Yes,
you are
sir.
Really a better moderator than just for a brief moment.
I think we lost Ba.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think the free Wi-Fi that Barrow was giving out to people in Birkama got to him. Yeah. So
we have to, guys. Because I have a last,
Oh.
Yeah, I think he might rejoin us. Maybe he is hearing too.
Yeah, you can go ahead. Whatever you wanted to add. Closing remarks.
No, I wanted to add it when he is here. If not, I think he's, to be fair to him, at least he came and he answers questions. That did not, actually, I have more questions and that did not take away my concerns. But to be fair to him too, we thank him for coming and talking to us. That's it.
Thank you.
Like I always said, Sariang, Pasamba, and the people that are listening, we come here every Sunday for the people, by the people. We are not the only actors. The reason why it's interactive, people are going to speak their mind. And what we try not to do is to censor people in any way whatsoever. Because at the end of the day, it's about 40 people, by the people. We encourage divergent views, but we also want to do it with respect and civility. Because all of you know, bringing people here on this platform to interview them, it's difficult. Yes. Some don't want to come. Some think that people are going to insult. We don't insult. But again, I'm appealing to the people that are making comments. We're not censoring you. Speak your mind. But you are also part of this program. And the only way you can help us to bring people, whether it's government officials, whether it's opposition, that is the only way we can have a very fruitful dialogue. And together, we will help build a better Gambia. We will be back next Sunday, inshallah. Hopefully.
Before I like to. She's been agitating, and I know her the whole entire time because I think she's emotionally charged today, and she has a activism heart, and I really do not want to go. But you know what? That's how it is, man. You can disagree to disagree. My job here is not to have a preconceived notion. Anyone who comes here, I treat them with respect and dignity. You can be angry with me, get some good meal. And by the way, happy Mother's Day to you, Sister Tukulorsi. Upon you, I salute you, and I'm signing off. That's it.
Hi, bro.